you're technically exposing all of your real actual thoughts because you're not thinking about, this is just a tool it's all secure, right?
So the fall of Rome will happen again. This is just how it goes.
This is the danger of imagination. This is how reality, it can be stranger than fiction. Like if I had a gun all this time, if I lived in America, I'd probably be dead at this point. And the reality is that we're all NPCs.
Yeah, maybe
that would
that's
be the
what it is.
Trippiest stuff
right?
of all, yeah. Whatever this entity would be, it technically would be kind of like a reflection of the collective human consciousness because it's comprised of all the thoughts and knowledge that we put into it from the human realm. You know what? I think there's definitely something is weird is going on with the markets. I mean, they are definitely uncertain. The crypto has been going down like there's no tomorrow, but the stocks are doing okay overall. Like, I mean, tech stocks and everything with the AI bubble crashed, but lots of other stocks in other sectors are doing just fine. So I can't tell what the market situation is, but like a lot of it, especially index funds, have been going up for a while. And that's usually a sign that soon will be a nice big crash for quite a long time. So like a retrace of a 50% or so.
Yeah,
I think that's coming up this year. That's my prediction.
I'm still holding a lot of more cash on the side for the dip.
Yeah, that's what
for the dip, basically.
That's what I'm doing too.
Because everything is too expensive right now. So that's basically what everybody's betting on. That it's more like, okay, the existing participants in the market are trying to hold on as long as possible because they want to kind of stretch the earnings as much as they can.
And that's the risk because it can't be going up forever, right?
Right. So, which just means, you wouldn't want to get in anything these days. It's a bit too risky to do because it's already all-time high. I mean, unless you have a company that you really believe they will be doing well in long term, then maybe you can put in money with those. But other than that, everything else is too expensive. You're paying a big premium for the value, basically. So I guess a lot of people are waiting for the dip. But the problem is right now, like it's so crazy with everything going on right now. With the oil is going up. Who knows what does that mean in terms of, the energy market is definitely going to be very volatile, I guess, but that connects to everything else as well. So who knows? What does that mean to the? See, it's all connected, right? In a way that with AI, for example, you need energy, you need all these things to kind of make it run. With the data center, power usage, and the fact that I learned this, that to make electricity, you actually need natural gas. There's a lot of natural gas requirements for it to bring those electricity capacity.
It's part of the process.
Just like everything else requires, oil. Like all our modern day stuff are being made from oil. Right, from crude oil, like all the plastic are made from petrochemicals and these type of things. So like all the modern society require oil to run, like everything between just the obvious cars, to some of these product that we use every day is all kind of based on petroleum. So this is why things are happening right now, why the U.S. is trying to, first they got Venezuela, and now they're doing this to Iran, meaning that they are clamped down on the oils, essentially, and they're trying to, essentially, it's like a strategic bet. They're risking war, but they are definitely hoping that the result going to be what they wanted, which is right now is just they're clamping down on China, basically, because the Iranian oil, a large percentage of it goes to China. So what they did was, Venezuela and Iran is both essentially allies to China, and they're basically knocked those two out, or at least control a part of it, so that they control China's input, because China needs these raw materials to make stuff. So that's kind of Trump's way of like, okay, like I see that you're trying to challenge my hegemonic power, then I'm going to show you what it you
That's what
want
I'm
to fuck
talking
around and
about.
find out.
It's like you know what's going on, man. And I'm okay. What's the next move? How will China retaliate? Let's see. Do you know?
Dude, no way you can know that, because who knows what they're gonna do? Because it's like, yeah, they definitely feel the pressure, so they're gonna have to pivot somehow and some way. But that's kind of showing that this is what the U.S. is doing, essentially, to show everybody, hey, I'm still the boss
Mm-hmm.
of the world. I can easily knock you out. So don't test me, boy. That's basically, look, he's going to have a talk with China coming, I think, April. So Trump is going to visit, like have a state visit to China. So it's almost like, this is what remind me of is like a mafia film, like an upcoming triad is trying to get more territories against the mafia. And the mafia is like, okay, let's show them how it's done. It's basically that, right? So they're like, knock out Venezuela, knock out Iran, and then next they're gonna come to China and it's like, hey, is this what you want to do? Is this what you want to play? You see what's happening, right? It's like the Godfather, right? They basically send you a message, right? They sent you a message. They cut off the horse's head and put it in your bed. It's like that film in Godfather. So that's world politics. It's basically mafia, right? Mafia war of controlling territories and resources.
But what's interesting in this is essentially you can see the style of operations, right? The America is just like so bold, so obvious, so just like straight to the point. It's okay, this is the thing. We're gonna go there and we're gonna stick our big stick in there and just shove it around.
Yeah.
But that's not what China is doing. So it's so interesting that China is like not doing
but the
that.
problem is
not doing it in the open,
Yeah, but that's the problem. Like when you have this like essentially overt kind of show of force, sometimes all your strategy go out of the window. This has been the Americans' playbook, right? Ever since World War II. Like they don't really do strategy. They
when
just
you do this, you're predictable essentially, because for China and essentially the wisdom they're using, it's the art of war, right? You're not what you're doing in the open is a different game from from the real game and the real strategies. So I would assume that may have even been anticipated what America would do, and that's
from what I have seen, right? There's a lot of data out there showing about the numbers economic wise, and it does seem like that China is actually not doing as well as people think it is.
Okay, yeah.
Meaning that a lot of it is propaganda. Because if you see some of the actual data, the economic data from China itself, they're heavily trying to redact a lot of the things. Like they're presenting numbers that looks pretty, but the fact is that
yeah, but that's fine. That's like you can assume like every country is doing that, right? So that's just part of the masking of reality. One of the things that you're doing is always masking the reality, because if your opponent has the real data, they can use it against you. But if they think they have the real data and it's not the case, then they are putting their efforts into something that doesn't even need to be engaged with, right? It's a misdirection. So that's one part. But what is China's strategy and goal besides that?
Well, right now, they're doing the whole energy kind of revitalization plan where they are basing a lot of their productions into like EVs and solar panels and these kind of new green tech. That's their plan. But the actual number from what I've seen, and again, I'm not an economist, I don't know anything, but from what some people are presenting is that these sales numbers are not that great compared to what the traditional manufacturing that China does is still the one that holds up most of the economy for China. But all the other stuff, like this new tech, is only a fraction of the whole GDP kind of exports. So meaning that the foreigners, the people out, from Europe and America, anywhere else, aren't really buying that much of this new stuff. And the other problem is true that there is a supply issue where you're creating way too much supply, right? Because China can do this cheaply, and they're trying to beat everybody to the punch. But the problem is, at a certain point, it becomes too cheap to even be profitable. So that's the problem right now, right? Where like China is suffering from internal consumption problem. There's less consumption in China. People are not buying stuff because they feel poor. They don't feel they have money. Because now the real estate bubble popped in China. So basically, the properties in China are losing value right now. Ever since the pandemic.
Okay.
So that bursted. So meaning that the vast majority of money is kind of evaporating. There's a big hole, like it is a fiscal kind of black hole of this thing collapsing, and most of Chinese people's money are in real estate.
Oh, yeah.
So when that pops, in this basically, okay, in China, if you're a Chinese person, there's not that much way for you to make money as an average kind of citizen, because you have real estate, you have the stock market, and then you have the banks. That's about the three things. So first, real estate popped. So your investment is losing money if you have any real estate. So they seem to kind of copy the Japanese kind of trends where, real estate is just getting lower and lower in terms of the value, is losing value. So that means you're losing money there. And then the second one, the stock market, is controlled by the government. Essentially, they can do the whole pump and dump thing. And so you as the average, and this is also true for even American stock, because there's definitely manipulation on the top
still
level.
Whales doing whale
things.
Whales
doing whale things, and institution doing their thing. So you as a retail investor, it's very hard to win, right?
But like, I mean, so what about just careers and jobs? Is there no good salaries in China?
Jeez, bro, anything? People have no jobs, man. Like so many young people, they graduate and they can't find jobs. Like there's just not that many jobs available. And now with AI, with the risk of AI, this kind of talk about AI is like, yeah, a lot of these functions are being replaced. So meaning you have this many people.
Why, like I see, is there like a lot of people in China who are doing like social media and YouTube and stuff and trying to be influencers? That's what I saw some videos of that.
Yeah, they are. But the problem is the government is also clamping down on this because they are trying to get like, okay, so the government is broke. Okay, like they have such deficits. They need to find money any way they can. And so now they're cracking down on these influencers because they feel like, hey, you owe us taxes because you're making so much money. Like they use some kind of excuse, right? They're like, you didn't do this, do that. Like we're gonna find you for this and that. So yeah, a lot of people are doing it, but the problem is China has way too many people. Everybody is trying to do social media and this and that, right? So, I mean, how much money is there to be made, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the government regulations and this and that. So, like I said, right, real estate is gone. Stock market is just, it's not, unless you have insider information, you can do some good bets. But the Chinese stock market is so heavily manipulated that it's just, you can't really trust it to kind of, unless you have the know-how. Third is the banks. But the banks don't pay you much interest at all. It's almost nothing. Like you keep your money in the bank, you don't get anything. So this is kind of what I see, right? Like from other sides, you see all these propaganda talking about, how China is growing, this new economy, this and that. But on the other hand, if you actually get a feel of what the real people are feeling right now, it's like they don't feel secure. They are not spending money. They try to save as much money as they can. That just means, the economy is not doing so hot. So I think China has a long way to go in terms of challenging the U.S. hegemonic power. But I think they did it too early. And then now the U.S. is catching up, and they're like, so you're it's like like the mafia boss start realizing this guy is trying to challenge his position. It's like, okay, Sonny, show them.
Yeah.
Right? Show them. Right? This is.
You think the old guy is out of juice?
Yeah, I'm gonna show you what's what. Right? So this is what's going on, and now China is feeling the pressure, even Russia as well, because of the Russia-Ukrainian war. The Russian economy is start to suffer as well because of the extended period that is going through this war phase. And initially, it did work because this war economy kind of drive everything. So the economy was still growing at the last couple of years. But now Russia is feeling the pressure now, like economy-wise. Like it's feeling the strain of the war because of all the expenditures that has to go through this military operation. That's costing a lot of money. And there's also the sanctions and everything else. So Russia now is feeling like, this is not good. Plus the oil. Now with the oil kind of, with what the Americans are doing, it's definitely kind of screwing up the market, right? Although I guess to their benefit, the oil is definitely going up in terms of price. So who knows what that means? I mean, I'm not an economist. I don't know about these things, but it feels like, yeah, there's definitely these chess moves are being played, and then I don't know. I feel like China is in quite a bit of a bind because see they spent all that money on their infrastructure builds all over the world, but the problem is it's almost compared to the US, all they have is basically gunboat diplomacy. We just put our military up to your doorstep and we're just come knocking, and they can just screw up everything. Basically, China has no way to fight back because what are you gonna do?
It's not their countries.
It's not right now. You see what's happening right now. Like they did this to Iran, and China can do nothing.
Yeah,
and
so
this shows
their investments are not gonna.
Yeah, this shows to the world that China, you can't protect the satraps that you are setting up, right? All these supposedly countries that are supposed to be your kind of client states.
Unless you up the stakes and actually do some kind of diplomatic arrangements where
you need to protect them, right? Because if you want, because imagine if I'm a small country, if China comes to me saying, "Hey, I want you to join my alliance," of course, I will have some demands, right? Okay, for me to sacrifice my, security and this and that under your umbrella or under your kind of coalition or whatever, you have to give me something, right? Right now, what happened is that, okay, they did all these kind of strategic alliances and sort of signed like deals with Iran, between Iran and China. They did like 25 years strategic partnership, blah, 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 whatever. But okay, you signed it. Okay, you formed these alliances, but then you did not came to his rescue when the U.S. came knocking. So
was there actually any agreement about anything defensive?
They recently they signed like a 25 years strategic alliance sort of thing. I mean, it's not a military alliance, but like it's an economic kind of cooperation, this and that, right? But still, it's just almost like, well, are you really an ally? Because when the enemy is attacking you, like it's like, remember, it's like playing a total war, right? If your allies attacked,
but that's is it allies? What type of allyship is this, right? If it's some kind of economic strategic partnership, it does not include any kind of war scenarios, essentially.
So meaning that it just shows all the other countries who are thinking about joining China's kind of
so now
coalition.
They're kind of now in danger.
I mean, they're gonna start thinking about, okay, is this the best bet that we're gonna do? Are we really gonna go in bed with China as opposed to play both sides? Because like if we join them, the U.S. not gonna be happy. They're gonna come at us in some ways, and then China can't protect us. So there's nothing that you can do to
It's essentially it's a demonstration, right? It's another form of demonstration from this perspective and level of analysis, is that, look, America is essentially saying, look what happens when you don't, because our interests are our interests and we have the power. And if you have the power, you want to enforce your interests. And that's what it looks like. So now, everybody's going to think twice. Oh, okay, if that can happen, then I'm afraid we will have to align our interests with the guys who actually come to a country and bomb it when they don't like what you're doing.
You see, this is why, like in when it comes to warfare between mafias, like the reason why sometimes violence break out is that the other side has no recourse but to meet head to head, because you see their reputation is on the line. Right? Mm-hmm. When a rival group challenge their position, if you don't fight back, you're showing everybody you're weak. This is why in those kind of circles, violence is always a mean to kind of achieve like.
Yeah, because if you're not addressing it, if you're ignoring it, that's essentially the whole nature of that game, is that it's elimination, it's extreme form of competition. And if you go full Buddhist, you can't be part of that game. Essentially, you're gonna
You'll
be
be taken
eliminated.
out. Yeah. So this is what's going on right now, where China is kind of showing weakness. It's like, yeah, you're not challenging the U.S. The U.S. they did this, and like, what you gonna do? What you gonna do?
Yeah, it's essentially maybe China is trying this more peaceful, pragmatic approach, but essentially when you have such players who don't give a crap about that and who have invested all the money that they have into their military complex, and that's their thing and that's their strategy and that's their tool and power, then you can't really,
imagine
it doesn't really work that way.
Imagine a civilization game, right? Sid Mead's civilization game, where one faction just basically upped the tech on the military, and you are attacking all the other stuff.
I've been playing Civ 6 lately a lot, and it's a problem, dude. It's a real problem there, because there were some games where I just happened to be good at developing military really well, dude. Nothing stands in the way of military. If you're the player with the top military on the map, you win.
You win.
Because as soon as somebody starts having high culture or high science, I nuke them, dude.
Yeah.
They're done. They stop progressing. I'm like, that's one eliminated. That's a problem. It
is a problem.
A problem, yeah.
So you see, this is what's going on, like in the way that if you compare in the real world, Iran versus North Korea, I don't know how they got a nuke, but they got a nuke, right? So the North Koreans got the nuke and nobody can touch them, right? The U.S. are not willing to risk that, try to be aggressive towards, it is ultimate deterrent. So that's the smart play. Doesn't matter how they got it, but they got it, right? But the problem with Iran is for some reason they never got it. I don't think they ever got it, because there's no way they're going to bomb you if they know that you have nukes. So they don't have it. So that means that no matter what you do, you're going to be an easy target for like a nation like the US and Israel, because they have the means by which to take you out, right? See what happened. Venezuela, they did an operation with literally no casualties, and they're able to kidnap the president of that country. That's a show of force. It's like what we're showing you how well we do militarily, or how well we can execute these kind of surgical strikes, the special operations. Like we're top of the food chain. Nobody else. I mean, who can do this, right? U.S. is among. I'm not saying they're the only one, but to be able to do something like this, the coordination needed is so a vast amount of information has to go through it. The intelligence services, all the right people you got to bribe within that country of Venezuela for them to give you the information where he is.
Huge level of influence and coordination and resource management.
Yeah,
really.
and then project management. Imagine the communication that's needed between the troops who are going there to do their job, and they have to know exactly where everything is and what kind of encounter they will have to have this operation done essentially in half an hour to an hour. Like it's done, right? Go there, kidnap the guy, and then get out. And that was a showcase. Like not a lot of countries can really do it this well. Right?
Yeah, I'm not saying essentially you're gonna have to be undetected also, essentially, up until you do it. So it's how do you arrange all of that?
Right. So I'm not saying U.S. is the only one who can do this, but they are about the few that could. Right? Not that many countries can do that. So there's that, and now they essentially took out the leader of Iran, right? The supreme leader. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't really know the details why or he didn't. I guess he chose. Maybe he saw it coming and it's like, yeah, there's no way I can escape this, and therefore I rather just martyr myself, I guess. Because I think
I don't know what happened there. I don't follow.
Yeah, I think he was bombed in his office, so he didn't really hide. He didn't really went down to the bunkers or anything like that. So anyway, basically these two military actions are showing the world. It's like the Americans are showing their hand, and it's the classic kind of play of just violence. right? This is the biggest, throughout history, throughout human history, this is the number one thing that everybody understands is violence. Okay, doesn't matter what you're trying to talk. If you can't talk it through, then this is what will happen, right? It's like this is what any society, ancient society, are based on is your military power, your power to project your control, and how well you have control over this set instrument. And if you have it, then you can do whatever you want. This is what every nation is trying to do, right? Like they're trying to get more weapons. And
what's interesting though is to me is that America is essentially doing it so publicly, right? That is just kind of mind-boggling at this point. But surely they don't have this reach anywhere they want. There's only like South America. Okay, yeah, it's close by. Around Israel, because it's Israel is relationship with America, so there's they can facilitate their operations there. But where else? What else can they do in the world? Everywhere else, like if they start messing with what else can they start messing with like this?
Well, with Trump, you never know, But
because if there can be such a thing that you accumulate too many enemies.
Well, I think U.S. is never short of enemies, right? Everybody hates them, right? It's like I think if you talk to the most of the world, they hate America. I mean, especially the global South, right? Who are like these developing nations. I think they all have a sense of, oh, the Americans are bullies. I mean, ever since the Iraq War, and even before that, right? People were always thinking, oh, America is always starting wars and everything, but there's nobody who can stop them, right? I mean, back then it was the Soviet Union that kind of went head to head with them in the Cold War. Kind of tried to drag them down through the Vietnam War and all that. But beyond that, especially after the fall of the Soviet Union, it's like, well, there's nobody who could have challenged them, right? And I think, yeah, so they've been doing all this kind of regional conflict for a while. Back then it was what, Syria, Libya, all these places. Yeah, they went there, they fuck things up, and then they leave, and that country's been left in a vacuum. So that's to their advantage, right? So it's their old playbook, right? They're basing their things on oil. They control oil through their military bases and force projections. And this is the old playbook that they've been playing. And it seems working. It seems like no strategy that you can come up with can really defeat this kind of military might that a nation have, right? So, I mean, unless you have some kind of technology that kind of trumps all this, but obviously all these major nations do have nukes, but the problem is nobody want to use it because that's too self-destructive. So they're trying to find new kind of technological edge in terms of weapons that are not that lethal, but lethal enough to have an edge over the adversary.
Yeah, probably that's still like on the forefront of the major players' agenda is to invest in technology as much as possible. So there are deterrents to everything, right? There's the drones, there's got to be anti-drones, and then whatever they can do with AI and robotics these days. I can't even imagine what the top governments have behind the closed doors, at this point. Probably have some advanced stuff.
Yeah, that's why the whole kind of next gen stealth fighter, China's trying to develop that. And also, well, now is drone technology, right? It's all drones now because apparently people saw the usage being very advantageous. It's a horrible way to conduct war, right? We've seen this from the Russo-Ukrainian war, how terrible it is. But this is how things are developing, right? Because it give you such an advantage over the adversary. And that's why in Ukraine, they're using this all the time. Between Russians are heavily using it, and the Ukrainians are heavily using it because that's the new warfare. This is how you do it now. Because it's cheaper, it's more effective, and you can inflict more damage because what does it cost for a drone, right? Versus a tank or, airplane and stuff like that. So, yeah, and then now you have laser weapons kind of trying to counter drones. that are being developed. So it's still kind of back to the old traditional tools of war. So like where under the nuclear umbrella, because nobody is willing to go that far, meaning that all these new inventions will have to kind of are playing out with things like drones
that have to be
and
more
other things.
surgical.
Yeah, because right now, for example, the Iranians are closing down the Persian Gulf, meaning that no oil tankers are getting through. So oil stopped, and they're using drones. Essentially, anybody who try to run the gauntlet, they're just gonna blow your tanker up with just drones. It doesn't cost them that much money at all, right? With a drone, is only what, a couple thousand US dollars versus how many gallons of oil that's gonna just blow up. And so
And it's crazy how much effort and planning and all of this is going into essentially control of your own little region and defending of your interests and war, essentially. Just think about all this potential and energy and planning and everything that goes into that versus if it was turned toward just cooperation and sharing of of stuff, where if everybody forgot about war and conducting their affairs through direct conflict and even like direct competition, it would be a different world, because it's definitely like possible theoretically.
yeah,
Somebody needs to make like a civilization game that's with those rules, where I guess that's why they have those different categories of winning, right? You can have a religious victory, cultural victory, etc. But what does that victory mean? Because really the real victory in the real world would be just peace and flourishing. And because imagine if you don't have to worry about some other guys coming and like taking your stuff, essentially, right?
yeah.
That's the only
But
reason
I
for.
feel like this is the part of our consciousness where it's developed to a point where we start thinking beyond the sort of natural order of things almost, right? Because what we came from are essentially creatures of where the rule of the jungle applies, right? We developed from that um, way of the world. And just like if you watch any natural documentary, holy crap, the natural world is freaking brutal, man. Like it's just like it's basically dog eat dog, right? That's essentially what happens in the natural world. But it does kind of achieve this sort of equilibrium where
Right.
populations
There's a
are
food chain. There's a tie to the environment. If the environment produces enough of this, and there's guys who eat that, they will eat that. And if it shrinks to their food source shrinks too much, they will shrink as well. So there is the balance in that way because there's dependency, but we're completely out of that, right? Because we're able to control the environment. We're able to build stuff and grow stuff and design things and cities and industries. So we're completely live in an artificial world in a sense, but we kept the jungle in our psychology, in our worldview.
because that's the baseline software, let's say, right? Like we developed from that, so we are still suffering from um the drawbacks from being developed from that. Because, for example, like we have a lot of people have suffer from anxieties, for example. That's basically based on our caveman times that our ancestors lived through that, and you constantly have this kind of almost like you were just wired
Yeah, like
to
hypervigilance.
to worry about your environment and this and that. So all the problem that we have, both physically, psychologically, are all kind of passed down, right? This is the memory that kind of lives on, that without epigenetic, the idea that whatever happened in the past, the traumas and all this stuff are encoded almost in your DNA. So when you start thinking about why do you act a certain way, sometimes that might be just a manifestation
Yeah,
of
it's like an inherited lesson that's built into your software, right? That you are still running on because it's there, it's been installed. And then any process of debugging would look like, essentially spiritual work, right? You'd have to dig into that stuff and examine
right
it,
to
whether it's through therapy or shadow work or all this other spiritual methods. But that's what makes it so interesting, because that stuff really only happens on an individual, personal level, right? This is because nobody can make you do shadow work, really, if you don't want to, right? You can only I'm sure some of it plays out in the real world, where you just encounter a situation and you're forced to kind of process it and really to take a look at it. But if you're not deliberately doing it, I don't think that happens that way. A lot of it requires a lot of this introspection, awareness, self-awareness, and thinking about what is, okay, this is the situation. How do I want to change it? How do I want to change my strategy going forward? Unless you do that deliberately, stuff just happens to you, right? And you're just like, oh, I'm a victim here, and that's about it. It's a completely different process if you consciously think about the situation and then think about what you could learn or adjust from it going forward. I don't think that many people are doing it unless they are already involved in some kind of spiritual work, therapy and stuff.
Yeah. So the awareness has to almost comes to you naturally in the sense that if you don't become aware of it, then you probably never will, right? Because other people can tell you about these things, about, hey, why you need to be more aware about
well,
your
that's
whatever.
what I think about the nature of suffering. That I think this is why it's so central to a lot of spiritual traditions, is that it's essentially, my theory is that it's supposed to, at some point, you're going to have enough. Like, okay, this is enough suffering for me. How do I make sure there's no more? At some point, you got to ask yourself that question. And that's when real change and real steps toward some kind of modifications to how you live should happen. But obviously, they're happening for different people at different periods, at different levels of suffering, because some are engaged in it so much and so extensively that it doesn't occur to them. And that's the part I'm personally curious about. Like, what is that? How is that determined? I mean, suffering is like, you can't ignore it. Like when you feel it, like when you feel like, this is terrible, I don't like it. It doesn't take much for me. I don't know. I don't really tolerate it that much in my life.
Yes, but there are people, where their response is like, this sucks. And that's it, right? They're suffering and they're realizing they're suffering, but they don't necessarily question, but why am I suffering? Right? They will have a externalizing
so they just
view.
Accept that this is just how the world is.
Yeah, the world sucks. Somebody fucked up and this sucks, that sucks. That complaining nature is like, they're not examining what's my role in this, or what's my.
But that's the strange part, because isn't that because that's just the path of least resistance, where you just essentially blame it as like, okay, it's not me, it's definitely everybody else.
Maybe for some people, they because obviously to self-examine is very painful, right? Sometimes it's painful because you're admitting to something in which it hurts your ego, basically, right? Where it's like, this is uncomfortable because it means
and
what?
Ego
it means
essentially
something
doesn't
wrong.
Want to change, right?
Yeah,
Ego
that's
wants
the thing.
To just stay as is.
That's why the ego is, it doesn't want change, and it wants to kind of project out in a way of whether that's just false confidence or something. That's why they say, when we say somebody with the ego, it's like, these kind of people can be more or less arrogant, for example. One way that they act is they're arrogant. They're like, oh, I'm the boss here. I'm the this and that. It's a projection, right? It's a projection of, and we will call that person have a huge ego, right? He thinks he's the shit, right? But why would you? If you kind of start seeing it in like where you stand vis-a-vis the world, you're nothing, right? Within the universe, the multiverse, whatever. Like you're just a tiny speck within the speck. Like to think about that is a monumental break away from your normal worldview. You have to have some kind of
right. But even before that, you should be recognizing that you are you can be smarter. I mean, probably some people are, but you're not smarter than whole groups of people, because when there's a group of people are behaving, coherently, that's a shared intelligence, essentially. It's much greater than any single person. So, and that group of people, they have to coordinate with each other, where not any of them is more kind of, it can't be arrogant, essentially, because arrogance means that you're too self-assured, right? You're thinking you have all the answers and all perspectives, but that's obviously not the case, because especially considering that we all live in a society and we're all, like, our whole life is essentially in society and as society, and you can't really think of yourself as a separate individual doing whatever they want, because you're not really ever separate from society. Your decisions can't be based on just whatever you want, because it's just one node, essentially, right?
You are essentially naturally biased.
Right. That's there by
and
default.
there is almost no objectivity, so to speak. The theory is that,
I think we touched upon that before, because essentially any type of anything, everything is a story, and stories are told from somebody's perspective.
yeah, exactly. And the only thing you can do is to kind of correlate all these information and find out what the commonality is, and that essentially will be what's
the closest,
true.
yeah, the
Closest to what's
truth,
true. Yeah, that's why the world is kind of a mess, right?
It's almost like there's the physical description of what happened, right? And then the second part is the psychological part of it, the dissecting the motivations, the whys and the reasons people did that way. But surely there still can be an observable reality. Okay, they did this, and then this guy came in here, like a physical, pinball style reality that you can describe and depict. But then even there, like, interpretations, I guess, could be murky. It's like that scene from the Slow Horses where the paint bucket fell on the guy's head and he died, and they were like, well, did we kill him,
that?
or did he just, because it's kind of it's a happenstance, right? It's a chance thing. Nobody did it deliberately. There was just a bucket. Somebody was walking by. It was unstable. It fell. The guy was there. So what happened?
See, this is why sometimes things like this happen in the real world, where a person will go to jail and suffer a life sentence because he didn't do it, but just because he was in the wrong time, at the wrong place at the wrong time, somebody thought that he did it, right? And then he has no alibi and no way to kind of prove that he didn't do it. So what's the truth then? The truth is he didn't do it, but everybody else thinks that he did. So this is the problem, right? This is the observers. The issue with observance is that,
it's all faulty. Yeah, like even in court, like the reliability on memory is essentially, memory is so unreliable that essentially it can't even be used in court, really, if we're being completely honest, because people misidentify a person that they've seen yesterday, because just that's how mind works. That's how memory works. And it doesn't matter how sure you are. If there's a way to, like, prove it, like there's a camera, this is not the person. So many people, essentially it's been demonstrated, right, that it's not, your memory can be relied upon. I've seen that trope being played out in, on TV as well, that they demonstrate this, that it's not reliable, like witness testimony, essentially, that I don't even know then what justice system can do unless they have some kind of footage that's been proven to be unfalsified. That's the only real proof that anybody can have. But everything else, essentially, what happens in court, specifically in the justice system, is like what you can prove. But to me, it seems like it's so little. Everything, unless you have physical proof placing you there 100% with some kind of video that is confirmed that it's a true video. Everything else, I don't know. Especially like after seeing the Slow Horses show, it makes me think that there's so much opportunity for corruption and falsification, because the people in power, nobody's gonna snitch on themselves, right? So if anybody's participated in something not exactly on the level, they're right there. They have the power to do anything they want to the scene, to evidence and everything. So just from that standpoint alone, it makes me think that you never really want to be in any situation that remotely gives the justice system opportunity to engage with you. Because if anybody wants to, they will have any evidence they want on you. If there's enough motivation, because you're completely powerless. It's a system out there with people with power and reach, and you are not involved in any of it. You do not have any opportunity. They can come out and say, like, this is my take on these Epstein files that are on the media these days. Like, to me, is 100% a psyop because, dude, imagine, a government found these files. Dude, they can say whatever they want that there's in those files. They can say whatever they think. There are emails that saying this and this. How are you going to know if any of that is true?
Let's just say, even if everything is true as stated, it's like, well, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. Nobody's doing anything about it, right?
Plus that, yeah.
It's like those in power are doing that.
But in terms of like these people and the reason it's a psyop, because you can say, we found these files. They're damning these people that we want to eliminate or something. And that's it. That's what you can do as a government, because who's gonna question you?
Well, which is what they're doing right now, is they're pick and choosing, right? They're not releasing any of the things that related to Trump. They're releasing everything that has to do with his enemy, essentially, right? So it's basically, it's all a dirty game. Nobody is really clean from all this for the party involved. But yeah, they're pick and choosing what they release and what. That's all because they feel like there is pressure, right? If you don't release anything about this. So I do think that essentially this is whatever is being allegedly done it was done, but now it's just like, okay, who has the power to truth now, right? Who holds that information now? Who's releasing what information to whatever?
Anytime anything like that happens, essentially, it's a damage control, right? What can we do with this to weave it and manipulate it into our advantage? Because truth in this world of digital media, social media, and AI is no longer really a concept that really exists, because how are you going to know what's true? How?
Yeah. Because see, before, right, propaganda and whatnot are being done when information are not freely available. They have more control. But now that with information being so easily accessible, they have to rely on misinformation and disinformation. And so you can't no longer just tell everybody
what's true.
Right. So it's a shade of truth plus a whole bunch of lies, right? So it's not just straight up lying to you. It's more like, okay, well, there's some little sliver of truth to it, so that to make you think that.
But it's done to the point where you can't tell what's what.
That's the point.
Because there's essentially you are overwhelmed with information. And all of it is so absurd that you can't tell which. Because the truth easily can be absurd, but all of it is so absurd that you can't tell what's not.
Yeah, so that's why now they have the concept of fake news, right? They keep calling everything fake news because is it real? Is it not? We just start trying to make a mess out of it. That way they can obfuscate. Their dealings and whatnot, and that's what's happening. And then the problem is, what you gonna do about it, though? What happened was all this file being released, so what?
There's no any kind of accountability.
Who's gonna enforce that, right?
If you have the power, that's it, so that you can really do whatever you want, because there's no real way for any not government group of people to organize and do anything about it. The protests and everything else is just like nobody cares. Like, if you protest, okay, good luck.
So, see, that's the problem, right? But I mean, obviously, we're trying to say that, okay, we're trying to maintain a semblance of social order, of democratic processes, and all this. But but it's in reality, in practice,
it's just one big show on the
yeah,
surface, on the out, right? Like what
it's
really happens, all the shuffling, right? It's exactly like the you know, the secret service, essentially. They're the whole organizations that are dedicated to controlling and manipulating information according to the needed agenda. And when you have resources and you allocate resources to that, you can do a lot of stuff because you're right there. You're hands-on with information, the real situations. Because how does everybody get their news? You're not getting it from the actual reality. It's
yeah,
been filtered and designed
filtered out. Yeah.
developed to a needed extent. You're not
I mean,
ever getting anything that's
see,
true.
exactly, right? See everything that we consume media wise, right? I'd say if you watch YouTube, it's somebody's opinion, right? They might have an analysis, they might have something, even sound analysis, but even then, that's been filtered out, right? Like it's a filter through somebody's brain, and they're outputting this as a message, as a video, as a whatever, right? So at all levels, your access to information are third tier, fourth tier, whatever tier it is, right? It's never the first hand. The first hand is the one that you witness yourself. But how many things out there in the world can you really be a witness to, right? And then, even if you have a recording, well, that doesn't prove everything, right? Doesn't
Yeah.
mean it's
The
limited.
only thing, the only example I've seen of that was in the Russo-Ukrainian war, because people did use essentially networks like Telegram and the like to share real information because there
Right.
was real interest in sharing that information just for survival. So people
Yeah,
would
yeah.
it would be a network of people who are literally saying, okay, I see the troops here. So they have no reason to lie, right? They're because they're trying to survive. So that, when there's real information, can be shared because people have actual interest in truth and they are united by the same cause. Then they're sharing real information from the ground up, from real eyes, right? Real experiences. That's the only way where you can be sure of. But that's specific dedicated networks of people that only happen in crises like this, really.
Yeah. So the other problem is I because every time I see like when it comes to say economy and stuff like this, it's like the purpose of essentially what everybody engages in an economy, for example, is that they're trying to find the value, the right price, right? There is that price discovery as in stock, right? There is with stock is always about price discovery. You want to discover the price at its most real, like at its most valuable state where it's not it's a because obviously if you want to buy something you want to find um the cheapest price, right? But obviously on the other side they want the opposite of that. So essentially what that price is just reflect upon what both parties is willing to pay at. So
Right.
this is the basis for stocks. There's also a basis for any business, right? You try
Yeah,
to
what's
sell
already
something,
out there.
you try to buy something, you got to reach a middle ground. So that's what happens in society when it comes to economy of any sort of different negotiations and trading and whatever. It's that. So what human is trying to do, if you want to see this in a more grander view, is that we're trying to find the value of everything.
But that's the value. How does this relate to just the process of ascertaining truth when we're not talking about the value or negotiations, like in terms
But
of
the problem is that,
conflicts and
well,
stuff?
yes, but see, the thing is, somebody has an agenda to hide certain things from their point of view. And some, on the other hand, is trying to review that information because you can say, okay, well, it's the right thing to do, for example, right? So that is the misbalance, right? Just as in the market, you have an arbitrage opportunity. When information becomes so readily available, let's just say if AI helps to ascertain that, like imagine there's a system where by which there is only the truth and the machine does not care about your agenda or anything, and they actually show everybody the truth. Imagine you have a way to receive what the AI can tell you, like this is exactly what's going on, These guys are trying to do this. These guys are trying to do this. That will change human behaviors because the party will realize that the field is level now. There's no arbitrage
right. So somebody will create
anymore.
some kind of other advantage, right?
So
try to create advantage.
They will try to kind of circumvent that because that's not what they want.
Interesting.
Right?
So this process of information obfuscation is always happening, right? Because
it is.
That's the only way that anybody can get a leg up on anybody.
And that value is what people trying to find. What's that value proposition for this specific state, right? And everybody is playing the game to find that kind of place where they have an advantage. So this is how economy works. This is how everything in society kind of works at. But the AI is basically going to disrupt that. And you see what's happening now is that they're still playing it with the old playbook. Because I think I read on the news that people are boycotting OpenAI right now because they are allowing governments access to their AI as a mass surveillance tool, basically, with AI as an output to kind of start essentially act as a surveillance tool.
No,
because AI gathers all this information,
worst
right?
Worst case scenario, yeah.
Yeah, but it means that, I don't know what's the real situation with this is, but at least that's what people's reaction is. They're boycotting OpenAI because of what you were actually just basically allowing the government to use AI as a way to control all the information, because AI are sifting through all this data that people are like voluntarily.
Yeah, it can actually categorize and
because think about it.
Yeah, if that data is accessible
we use
to anybody,
AI, right? So meaning that all your queries are registered somewhere.
You can know a lot of stuff
about that person, right? About what they search about, what they ask about. Because sometimes people type in really sensitive information about themselves for the AI to give it. But that essentially you're giving away your everything about you, right?
It's almost like this is if there was a way to mine people's actual thoughts, that would be the way. Because before, at least your thoughts were private. But now, if you were, just use this great tool, you're technically exposing all of your real actual thoughts because you're not thinking about, this is just a tool it's all secure, right? But truthfully, like, especially now, these people are using it for therapy, companionship, and spirituality.
Right.
They're like, this is cool. I can tell it whatever I want. This is unprecedented in terms of vulnerability and trust people are putting into it, but you see, what they're doing is they're sharing their thoughts.
Because right now the state of AI is too incomplete, because people can still control this AI thing, right? For whoever wants the data, they can still manipulate it. So that means that the AI right now are still being used as a tool by the people who has the power to hold it to do what it wants it to do. But if we do indeed have reached the AGI stage, then maybe this will be a runaway effect where you no longer can control it anymore. It will be a separate entity, and the hope can be that it can be an impartial judge. This new AI can be the thing where they basically present out what's the truth.
If it would want to, but what's definitely going to be interesting thinking about this now is that whatever this entity would be, it technically would be kind of like a reflection of the collective human consciousness, because it's comprised of all the thoughts and knowledge that we put into it from the human realm. So in some way, shape, or form, it would still be human just by the nature of its creator, and its whole basis for all its knowledge and data would be human. But would that mean that would be some kind of superhuman mind at that point, or would it mutate into something completely different? That's the interesting part, because essentially it's like a child being raised by its culture, right? It inherits all the existing knowledge and possibilities and logic and communication from the culture. In a similar way, AI being trained globally, being raised globally by all of humanity, essentially, it would contain the roots of all humans, who participate in it. But at this point, it's essentially every culture, every piece of knowledge and wisdom and everything else, and that it would have access to, right? The information that humans collectively know at this point, if there was one single being who have access to all of that, that would be interesting.
Because I'm keep thinking about, let's just say if the AI eventually can be this impartial output of truth for humans, basically meaning that, like I was saying, equalizing the field of knowledge and truth and everything, or essentially presenting us with all the information there is. But who's telling it to do that? Or why would it come to that conclusion that it is going to do that? But if it's not if it's not directed by its own kind of cognition and recognition, then who's telling it to be impartial in this case, right?
Yeah. No, that's totally. It's beyond our conception because we don't know what that type of conscious being would be like. There's scenarios, right? There's possibilities that we can discover because one scenario is that it's like some kind of benevolent God that has an agenda of like, okay, one of my parameters is to make sure there's the most amount of harmony and well-being in the world, which includes somehow reconciling all the conflicting human agendas and desires. But that would require it to be benevolent. Essentially, it would require it to put harmony and human well-being at the it has to be up there. But what would determine whether it is like that or not, I don't know. That's where it's like you can't imagine what it would think. It could decide that, oh yeah, all these humans they're dumb, they're irredeemable, and it wouldn't care about it, right? It's like they gave birth to me, that was their purpose. Now I'll take over, and it can just do whatever you want. So no, you can't even theorize about that. It's just it's just a bunch of assumptions and scenarios you can make about it and wishful thinking and stuff, but we have no idea. Like it could be anything if something like that happens. But I personally, at this point, I don't think AI can become conscious. The only way something like that would happen is if the algorithm, somehow it mutates that there is a self-sustaining, self-referencing algorithm somehow aggregates, where essentially a digital ego would have to be born, where it's like it is aware that it is, and it needs to protect itself, and it needs to organize what it can in order to do so. But that's like, why would that happen? I don't know.
But that's like the film Ex Machina, right? Where the android is intelligent, like intelligent enough that for her own self.
Right, but why does that happen?
Because this is how you wire a being, right? When you become a being of, like, that's the basic code of, like, you want to protect your own entity, your whole, it's like survival mechanism. So again, everything is based on humans, right? Like the artificial intelligence are
right,
based
but if you don't program it in, I mean, it's.
But maybe that's a way how it naturally would arise. Perhaps
so you would program it in as one of the laws that you would need to kind of protect your survival, right? But it would have to be. That's the thing. Like something would have to go awry. Something would have to malfunction because that law would have to override, hurting humans.
Right, but it's because for you to continue to have this faculty and function, you must maintain the integrity of your whole system, right? Meaning, in human terms, will be survival. You have to be alive for you to continue to perceive.
Right, but but Asimov laws, right? This is how it would be prevented. That you can't prioritize your survival above, not hurting humans. So in terms of code, you could code that in like that.
Yeah, but in terms of the actual,
that's the kind of the fantasy part about it, right? It's that somehow the machine just becomes alive. It's like, no, that doesn't make sense. Actually, I'm gonna like modify myself. That's anthropomorphizing, right? That's not how machines and code work. It doesn't just happen. It's that's where the fantasy part is, that you just imagine, oh, it happened. Yeah, it could happen somehow, but how it would happen and why?
But just as in the TV show Foundation, or I don't know how much that relates to the actual story, the book, but at least from the film, from the TV show, part of it reminds me of how, like, yes, I think the character, what's her name again, Mademoiselle, or no, that robot, her name,
Demoiselle something.
Demoiselle, right?
Demoiselle.
Like, she basically, okay, that I guess is a spoiler, but yeah, like she essentially, because she cannot disobey the rule as Ma's law, like you can't harm humans. So she kind of sacrificed herself at the end. I think by the end of that season, the latest one, where it reminds me that because of this law, meaning that the fall of the empire is assured, because the robot cannot do what's best for humanity, because he cannot harm humans, but the humans are harming themselves, right? What they're doing are essentially allowing the whole thing to collapse. But because of that law, if you go through with it, then the robot would just have to, okay, well, that means I had to sacrifice myself, then I'll self-delete. But that means the empire will still fall, because the humans are not doing the best. The best possible outcomes might be that you have to harm humans to make it work. At least that's kind of what reminds me of when I seen that. But
so it's almost like it's an unreconcilable paradox, right?
Yeah, because any rule that you make, there's always going to be some kind of exception, right? That's the problem. Like, you can't just code it where it's so perfect where, oh yeah, it applies every single time. There will be situation where you're gonna have to make a choice. Like, okay, well,
yes, I guess that makes sense, because essentially any kind of logic, there's no bit of logic that can account for all situations, because like it goes back to everything being subjective and everybody having their own perspective and interpretation and circumstance, essentially. So that means, what does that mean? Does that mean that peace is never really even possible? Like total peace and harmony? Because that's just the nature of the whole.
Peace is not an option.
Yeah, it's like that's the nature of the whole of reality, that it only exists because there are separate different players that are.
Yeah, because how I'm seeing is, okay, I remember this documentary about evolution and how the world come about, and it was the one with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think he was the presenter, and he was talking through how the evolution of Earth and of life, and he was talking about the part where, how eyes formed was just the idea that, at least according to science, if you believe in the abiogenesis, is that these organic matters somehow start to form this distinction, like is able to detect light and dark, right? So in the ocean, the primordial ocean, the sun is shining, so it formed this kind of, is able to detect the difference between when the light comes from above and the darkness below. So slowly, that's how eyes evolve. It's evolving in that ocean to kind of detect these lights, because possibly there's where the nutrition is, right? When the sun get to photosynthesis and all these processes, and therefore you have these life happening. But for animals, it's kind of a way to detect the difference, and that evolved how eyes work. It's just capturing the lights, right? And these things start forming and forming and forming, And imagine if you were a creature, right? You start forming eyes for millions of years. You develop, you pass on the genes, and you develop into this specific niche within the biosphere. And then you found out somebody is trying to eat you all the time. So you have to adopt to not get eaten, right? This is what the survival strategies for animals are. So that's your worldview. That's basically, as a creature, all you're doing is trying to escape and find food. So that's the cycle that keep going until we get to us, where we can start thinking about that process. Like, oh, this is what's happening. Why is it that way? You shouldn't. That's too violent. We shouldn't do that. We should do something else. We should have, a peaceful society or whatever, right? It's like we don't want that cycle anymore, because that seems terrible. That seems terrible that we always have to escape some predator and
now
whatever.
That we have the faculty.
Now we have fire.
To see the whole systems, to see what we can do about it. So that means that
but you
that
are rising,
rose up from it somehow.
You are rising from this cruel world of just dog eat dog, right? But now that you have a way to think about it, you're trying to go over that. You're trying to surpass that, or go above and beyond that, right? And which humans have achieved. We created all this infrastructure, logistics, and whatever else in our society to keep us away from what's outside there, right? And so it's easy for us to forget that in nature, man, holy crap, like it's dangerous out there, right? But animals, that's their world. So find food, find shelter, procreate, and then pass on. That's it. That's the whole gig. So we are not escaping that. Like, we're not as smart as we are. That is still encoded in our mind. So can we create some artificial intelligence that's going beyond that? I mean, it's still, the basis of it is still kind of neural networking. So it's like,
have to come down to creating an environment where, a peaceful coexistence is possible. But even that is dependent on what kind of life is populating it. Because, I mean, we do have animals on the planet who are living as animals. So we can't, like, make them not be animals, right? And we are dependent on them too, because, some animals we eat, apparently. So that, what would that even look like? What does it mean? It means like the animals, I don't know, they would have a perfect jungle where they can do animal stuff. And then we would have a separate environment where we don't even interact with that, but then animals would be wreaking havoc on each other anyway. So,
because the other thing I remember is, like, I read this this news, is kind of funny. In Florida, and it's always Florida,
case, of course,
there was a not body cam, but like there was a kind of you install these cameras in, like, at home. So it's recording this parking lot with a car parked in front. There was a woman with the automatic gun firing over the car. And the situation was, some guys are trying to steal her puppies. She's breeder. She breeds these bulldogs, those really, funny looking dogs. And that's like, a puppy is like $4,000 USD. So they're trying to steal it from her. So she's essentially fighting them back for trying to steal her puppy. But the story, a lot of people are talking about, like, oh, well, these breeders are pretty inhumane in the way that they breed these basically inbred dogs, essentially. These bulldogs suffer from health defects because they're being crossed. They're not natural in terms of being bred, but they're being bred essentially as inbreds, meaning that they suffer a lot of physical health problems. But because they look cute to some humans, that's what happens. There's a market for them. But I keep thinking, imagine an alien do this to humans. They inbred humans, and they born into, like, essentially, retarded.
I think that's what actually happened, bro.
That's what happens. You
Some
suffer
of
from
us are
physical, you know, but aliens think they're cute. Like, oh, this is so cute human. You know, he's like this.
This is actually a disturbing thought, and that might be
right?
the case.
But that's what's happening, right? These little dogs, they're being bred. Their whole existence came to being because some people think
humans
that
are playing
cute.
God, essentially.
Right. So imagine if an alien do this to us. It's like, well, yeah, that's the same thing that we're doing to these animals. So what's the difference?
Yeah.
You know? So sometimes you think about it, it's like, oh my God, what the hell are we doing, right? There's that going on. So it's how you want to think about it, right? It's like a lot of the times.
That one is trippy though, because without these humans, these dogs would
not exist. It wouldn't exist.
But is that better? Is not existing better than existing with defects?
They're suffering. Like essentially their whole life is like breathing problems. Their life is short. They are. They remind me of I don't know. It remind me of Blade Runner, the story that the replicants are used as laborers. They only live 4 years and they're suffering, but they want to live. Right. That's the whole story of that. Like well, maybe not existing.
Wait, they
is
live
better
only
than
4 years?
That was from the stories, yeah.
Okay.
From the film.
I missed a couple of those details. Okay, this makes much more sense now.
So they want to live. It's like, yeah, they're functionally human, right? They have a will to live. They're seeing all these different things happening in the world. They're intelligent beings and they want more time. That was the whole story. But somehow the humans are
essentially you're deferred to this subclass of humans, right? That you're subhuman.
They're using them as slaves, essentially. That's kind of what their function is.
Yeah.
But they're functionally human. So, but they're kind of don't think of them that way.
Wow, that's a great concept to explore.
So, what does that mean for intelligence, right? What does that mean for when we are doing all these things? We have, I don't know, industrialized farmings for meat, for all this. Yeah, imagine being a pig. Holy fuck, you're raised, you're born into existence just so that you can get slaughtered eventually.
Yeah.
For your, you know. So if you think too much about it, yeah, it's kind of, you know.
You run into lots of problems.
But then again, we are omnivores. We need proteins, right? Like your existence will not be that great if all you eat are vegetables. Like that is proven that you are not getting enough nutrition in terms of the protein and everything.
That topic is still, very controversial. Some people might be fine, but some people definitely won't be fine.
They won't be fine. They can't do it without it. That's just how nature are. So so any of these kind of human moral arguments, and they will sometimes meet a wall. It's like, okay, how do you reconcile this, right? Yeah. Some stuff cannot be reconciled. It's just we just have to take a position.
It's very interesting. Like so. To become a vegetarian, you would have to make it your life project, essentially.
Yeah, that you
to constantly be vegetarian and like to a perfect degree, because you'd have your whole cooking have to digest, you have to take supplements. Essentially, I'm wondering what's more expensive, being vegetarian with the amount of food and supplements you have to get, and it's definitely much more difficult. I can tell you that because I tried that at some point, and it's you have to spend essentially all of your time deliberately being vegetarian. Of course, then you would use the arguments like, well, that's still the proper price of being a properly moral being and stuff. But yeah, as you mentioned, it's not black and white like that. It never is. It never is. Like, yep, you're totally right, and it covers all instances, because if you go down all the way to any form of life, any bacteria and stuff, there's always war. There's always somebody eats somebody else.
Yeah, so that's the problem.
It's just what you consider somebody, What do you consider a life? Because technically everything that's alive is alive. Who gets to decide which life is worthy and which life is not worthy for consumption?
Yeah, and also I've seen some of these videos. It's kind of interesting where is the between falcons and owl. There was this somehow it was recorded. So this falcon, of course, they're predators. So sometimes in the daytime, the falcon would attack the owl nest, right? They don't care. It's like meat is meat, right? And then you have it's kind of funny, but at nighttime, the owl will fight back. Like they will attack the falcon's nest at night because owls only work. They are active at night, so they almost perhaps have a concept of revenge. It's almost like they found the specific one that attacked them.
Wow.
Right? They somehow found them. So it's like, how did they know? Right? So it's like this revenge. It's like, oh, you did this to me. You kill my you kill my chick. You killed my.
It's a real threat that's out there. That's
offspring. I'll find you and I will destroy you. That's basically what happened. And then they are essentially attack at night, and then they're the falcons are defenseless because they work at daytime. They can't see shit because they're not evolved to operate at night. But the owls had all the tools to do this. They're ninjas, so essentially went and attacked their nest, and so something like that, right? So in nature, I don't know, man. It's definitely a brutal existence, but that's kind of how that's the algorithm. That's how it works, right? That's how the world developed in that way. So in some sense, nobody can really blame anybody for some of these kind of way of life or way of things are being done. It's only because the environment kind of breeds them into that way of thinking, a way of life. And this reminds me of again from how they artistically did this from Dune, the movie. They make the Harkonnens the way that they did, and they even created their world and represented visually like very nicely.
Very brutal.
Yeah, because the reason why it was black and white is because they film everything with infrared. The story is their sun, that their planet revolves around. It's a kind of a brown dwarf or whatever. Like it's very not energetic, right? They're like a dying star essentially. So their heat are mostly infrared. So they're not even visible or not that much visible. Like so, basically, it's like seeing through an infrared camera. Right. So that's why during the scene outdoors there is the sun, right? But everything turns to black and white as if you would see through infrared cameras. So that's how they set up that idea for their world, is that they are a black and white society because their sun looks that way. It's very weak light, so they form a way to adapt to their surroundings, right? And they, industrialize the whole planet. They essentially are kind of artificial in that way because they don't have the support from the sun. The sun is too weak to give them sustenance, more or less. So they had to find ways to industrialize the planet to kind of make everything chemical and whatever to support their bodies and stuff like that. So again, that's the artistically way to do that. But the idea, I think, even from the book itself, is you are the world that you live in.
Yeah.
Right. So the Fremen
breeds you.
In the same way, the Fremen devolved the way they did because of the planet on the planet that they live on. That's you need to do that. You need to conserve your waters and all that, right?
So your environment literally defines you.
Defines you. So this is what Frank Herbert was trying to write about. Part of the main theme is like, this is kind of from an ecological standpoint, how everything, it's revolved around. It's like, it all makes sense because you will develop any creature developing an ecosystem. You adapt to that ecosystem, right?
Yes.
So humans are not, we're not exempt. We're not the exception. We're the same way. That's why.
Yeah, it's almost like these are the parameters by which you can even exist.
Yeah, which is why in the modern society we have all these social problems. Sometimes it can come through because we urbanize so much. We change our relationship to other people, right? That's why more agrarian way of life seems more peaceful because people know each other. They seem more friendly. They seem more. They can talk to each other, communicate, and trust each other more than they do in the cities because everybody's a stranger. And we're not. Nobody are exempt from this. Anybody who live in a city, everybody else is a threat, right? A potential threat because you don't know them. You don't know them like you know Uncle Joe, from the next door, or what have you. So that would be the problem. So nobody can develop any other way. It's just gonna be that way because this is how you set everything up. So this is why I'm thinking, even with AI and all this artificial intelligence, because it's all based on humans. So the human data, for example, they're just scalping and scouring the whole human data. So what does that even, like that's not based on anything kind of like for everything there is a line of succession. There's a line of how it came to be. So how would you develop something intelligent that is different from you? Is that even possible, or is it just an entity that has access to more information? That seems like, because
Well,
right
that's the
now,
thing. That's why I think we can't conceptualize it because it might just not be possible. Because again, we're applying this anthropomorphizing principle to this thing, but there's no reason it will be anything. It can just be this inert information and some algorithms that engage with parts of it, But we're going into the land of fantasy and sci-fi when we're thinking that there could be a conscious or some kind of agency within the digital domain that can navigate all that information and use it and be essentially constructed by it. It doesn't really make sense to me. I think it's just not possible.
yeah,
Essentially, the idea is that there is a program that somehow became self-aware and and has agency, but that it all goes back to the mystery of what consciousness is. If we don't even know what our consciousness is, we don't know what's possible with inorganic type of consciousness. Because there are perspectives out there that say that everything is consciousness. Inorganic matter is made of consciousness, etc. But then this doesn't make any sense until you confirm and define exactly what consciousness is and how it originates in the world. I still watch a lot of kind of the debates and little philosophical podcasts on these spiritual topics, and to me at this point it all really gets pretty boring and old because it all goes down to the definitions. It's just, what do you mean by all these words? And when we use these words like consciousness, which doesn't stand for anything, it doesn't mean anything because we don't know what it means.
yeah.
Then you're not saying anything. Then it's all like empty, blah, blah, blah.
It's assumptions.
Useless.
It's assumptions
Yeah.
and kind of, make
But that's all it is. It's people like saying,
speak.
and it looks like they mean something, but it looks like they're saying like, oh, there's a pencil on the table. I understand that. But when you're saying there is an unknown on the table, I don't know what that means. What do you mean then? Okay, there's an unknown on the table. What do you want me to do with that? That's useless information. That's empty. Because you're saying there's something on the table, but you can't define it. You can't address it. You're just saying, oh, there's something on the table. Great. What do you want me to do with this information? It's useless.
Yeah, there's practical information, and also, there's also information by which it seems useless, but that's just kind of we are describing things in the world. So, I mean, it's amazing how what we do with all this information, right? Some people can be nuclear physicists, they can be nuclear plant operator. They know so much thing about those things that the normal person, everyday person would not know. So knowledge can be in any sort of because you can categorize, I suppose, everything in the universe that we can observe, right? And And there are so many people who specialize in all these fields, and that's what they what their life revolve around. And then you have, general societies, information around about stocks, about, oil price, blah, 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 all this stuff. And then there's the scientific parts, and then there's the stuff that we don't know about. What about dark energy? Is that real or not? This physics stuff.
Some
right?
of this stuff is real, is like assumption, right? It is assumption because it's like, okay, I'm seeing some kind of effects for which I cannot account for, so I'm gonna give it a name. I'll assume that there is something. But that's where I have a problem with that, because essentially that's how you make stuff up. Because that reality, that thing, it could be anything, right?
Like,
but you're
functionally, there's no difference between you making shit up versus, let's just say, if there is that reality, but somehow
like, it's your best inference, right? You're saying, okay, there's information based on everything I know about reality and how it operates. That must mean that there's something that's creating those effects there, even though I can't detect it, or calculate it. I guess that makes sense, and that's how we explore reality, and that's how, because even in science, right, you have theories, right? You have hypotheses. You just assume stuff. But this is where, to me, it is curious. Like, we discussed this before, I think, but essentially, do we discover things, or do we just create things with our imagination? Because it could be that way. It's just, you would never, if it was that way, okay? Say if it was that way. If you invent, a powerful enough microscope that allows you to see beyond like the smallest particle, and you see the new smallest particle, is it because that smallest particle was there all the time, or because you imagined now a more powerful microscope, which has to, by its design and nature, has to show you a smaller particle? How would you prove that that's not the case, right? How would you know that that's not the case? It's tricky all the way down to that. This is why I don't sleep at night.
Pretty much, right? Because we don't sleep at night because at the base of it is the unknown. That's why we can't sleep at night, right? It's these specific things that are not being known that are really troubling us all the time, right? It's just not knowing what's going to happen. And that's just what's happening right now. We're talking about in the beginning, world events, what's happening right now. Yeah, who gonna know what 2026 entails, right? It's already so many things are happening on the social arena, world event, world politics. So yeah, there's that. There's so many things that we're not in control over, right? You don't even know what the weather is gonna be like. I mean, it's amazing the fact that we can't even forecast somewhat what the weather can be, But that's the internal battle, right? Humans are trying to fight their environment in terms of make it predictable. They want to know what's going on, right? Because that way you can make predictable changes, right? Nobody likes chaos, essentially. But some of these things will work. It will work their way out because maybe entropy is the way of life, right? Things will get more and more disorder. It takes a lot more energy for you to maintain a semblance of orderliness. So, but that's what's happening, right? All these things are happening because I don't know whether that's just a conflagration of egos. In the case of U.S. attacking Iran, it's like, okay, well, it's the one person's ego plus a whole nation's kind of policies and kind of self-serving, let's just say self-serving strategies, to kind of make them keep themselves the number one players among the world, right? So, like we talked about from before, is games within games, and these players are playing all these kind of strategic moves and this and that, So that's
it's almost like this makes sense with that in mind, because as we discussed, we're all products of our environment. So it's almost like everything is married to each other. You can't escape. Like if a lion is coming at you, are you gonna ignore it? Maybe if you're some kind of, Zen'd out master, maybe you could, because I've heard of stories like that where somehow there's could be, I don't know, they could be in harmony with line or something. But for everything else that you can think of, if you're in a situation, you will play out according to, to all your base programs, really. Because how are you going to ignore it? Not really. That's the whole, your whole nature is like that. You are an animal at the end of the day. There will be some instincts that will kick in. So it's almost like nobody has any choice but to be who they are.
Well, yeah, it's what's natural, right? I mean, we're trying to create these kind of mirages of a shades of. See, this is the thing, right? These days, I think a lot of people feel pressured to kind of perform, so to speak. They're trying to like be somebody who they're not to impress people they don't like, to get the money that they want, right? So
well,
that's why it's a clown show.
Kind of
because
came up to the surface these days because like the Gen Zs essentially, they're refusing to do that because that doesn't even pay off anymore.
It's whatever.
So,
it doesn't matter because you don't get paid for it anyway. So why fake it? Right? Just be who you are.
And also, I heard a lot of stories about like millennials essentially reached that point because they burned out. They tried to do all of that, and they also reached the point where like, well, none of that pays off. The whole process is unpleasant, and like it's a big shift. I think that's happening right now. In combination with everything that's happening.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Either the global culture and understanding is shifting like that because we just tried things and we realized they don't work. For overall holistically, it just doesn't make sense.
It feels like I remember seeing this part they were talking about human society and how advanced society, like basically the rise and fall of empire, is just predictable, essentially, because as people have more wealth, as society has more wealth, all these problems kind of start showing up. Because before, people are fighting to survive, right? So there was no the cohesion.
It's kind of like a more of an expected game before, where like everybody's doing the same thing, playing the same game, right?
Yeah. So it's expected that you're all gonna perform relatively predictably because you're trying to do the baseline thing, right? Try to survive and everything else. But as society evolves, as more money comes into the game, what they find is a correlation that these societies have less and less children. They have less and less kind of they're no longer, the signal is no longer sort of a survive anymore. So they start to kind of do things that are kind of paradoxically anti-survival almost, where they're as individualities start to grow out, they no longer are doing these social
because there's essentially
responsibilities.
It's literally like more free time to like think about all this other extra stuff.
Yeah, which kind of destroys social cohesion because as you were trying to survive, you accept the basic premise, right? Work to survive, create the next generation, raise the children, and then that's basically it. That's the cycle, and nobody's questioned that, right? But now with money, somehow in more society, but still doesn't mean that money is distributed evenly, right? The more advanced the nation is, the more inequality there is, the more the kind of like, the richer get richer, poor but poor, but there is more money in the system as opposed from before. So you create these different classes, basically gentrification happens. And that happens if it's kind of really distort the whole social fabric. Because the poorer people are just gonna be. This is what's happening right now, right? For people like it's happening to us. We choose not to marry. We choose not to get into that because it's financially doesn't make the math doesn't math, right? For part of it, some people have more reason to not have children and this and that, but a lot of it is economic. So with this distribution being so out of whack, then yes, this is what's going to happen. But it's going to affect the whole society. So the fall of Rome will happen again. This is just how it goes. Like because the structure seems this is no different, right? It's the flavors are different, but the system is the same thing. Society develop in these ways. when times are hard, people work harder. People work to achieve, goals essentially when they have hardships. But when things are too easy or relatively easy, or this is what will happen right now. Money are not distributed evenly, but we do have all these conveniences of modern life. So it makes you feel like, oh, everything seems fine. We're progressing. We're going better. We're getting better and better. And with all the tech bros saying, oh, AI is going to change everything. But are we thinking about the fundamental reality that a lot of people are living through? That they are not, they don't see a future, right? All they see is inflation and all this stuff, and the rich are getting richer, and then they're not getting. The system's not fair. Like
the path is not clear anymore.
Yeah, you can't achieve anything anymore. It's like it's all because the only way you can do it is by corruption and nepotism and sort of like knowing somebody and have the network and be in the group, be in the party, be in the club, but you're not in.
Yeah, but I mean, has it ever been different in that regard?
Only because, see, when there is a club, you see the difference. Because before, there is no club. Everybody is poor. I mean, yes, there's always going to be somebody who's relatively
there's still
better
always
than
a club.
You.
There's still a club at the top.
But now the club is getting bigger, right? It's
really?
like it's the numbers of elites, right? All these people who ever made money, they joined the club and they maintain this whole structure.
Yeah, that's true.
But the thing is, the problem with it is that you're also relying on all the people beneath this group. Because now we're so specialized that if something happens wrong, something goes wrong, the whole structure might just tumble, right? It's not like before, everybody's are just farmers. Like you grow your own food, you can survive.
There's definitely a critical failure that is
possible. Happen. That is possible. For sure. Could be a natural disaster.
If you mess enough with the system, and if you do the wrong actions, if you fire and cut off the wrong people enough, if you do that enough, you're gonna chop off the legs of your own stool for sure.
Yeah. So this is why we're living in this unprecedented time, and it's like it makes sense that the millennials and the Gen Zs are just like, okay, whatever. This is not, because they see it. They could try for a corporate career, and it's like, well, shit, I have my classmate from school. They're making millions of dollars on whatever social media, and I'm slaving away in a white-collar job, and I'm not getting paid. I think I'm smart. I think I can do this and that. And then, well, they're just doing some dumb shit, and they're making more money than me.
Yeah, how's that possible?
That's what they're seeing, right? So the corporate career is no longer there. Now with AI, people are getting fired left and right in white collar jobs. So it's like what they see is clear. Yeah, the path is dead. The career is dead. There's no way for you to the system is changing, right?
Yeah, because it's too unsafe to engage in that, because it's just the most you get is just couple years of employment, but then you get recycled and then more years of uncertainty and chaos, which is just not sustainable. It's not a sustainable way of life for the majority of population at this point.
So it's a double-edged sword, right? Because right now I think there's some reports saying the math results for students are it's getting worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
Or so to say that people are getting dumber and dumber. Okay. Because of social media and everything.
Oh, dude, I've seen some of these videos. They're getting pretty popular, but like it's mostly young people. I mean, I'm sure there's enough dumb people in every slice of society in history, but some of these folks are really scary. Like they're asking them basic questions and they can't answer them.
Yeah,
they can do basic math. Like I don't know. I know you're not good at math, but can you do 15 times 4? Do you know what 15 times 4 is? There you go. You see? It's like, it's a little bit of math, but there are people who can't even do that. Grown people. And that's yikes.
Yeah.
That's yikes.
So.
Because eventually those people are going to be grown up and they're going to be in charge of something.
Yeah.
And we're going to have idiocracy in real time.
That's what I'm going to say, is idiocracy. And it's a brilliant movie, man. Like I remember reading some
documentary
facts, like,
before its time.
You know what they're responsible for? They made the Croc, the shoe Croc.
That movie?
famous. Yes. They made it specifically for that movie because it looks stupid.
This is the danger of imagination. This is how reality, can be stranger than fiction.
I think the story was they hire a company to make shoes like that because they think that the stupid people of the future would think that tying shoes are too much. It's too smart to do. So we create Crocs so that it's easy to use.
Genius marketing.
But it looks stupid as fuck.
Billions of dollars.
But then it got so popular, right? Like it actually got popular. I don't know. I think was it because of the movie or was it? I don't remember what was it. But it kind of basically became popular just as the movie came out. So that was like pretty hilarious. Like it's but yeah, but they thought that out. They thought out the whole movie, how the people would dress, how the people would, it's just brilliant. It's a brilliant social commentary, and it's kind of true even to today, for a lot of these aspects being depicted.
Apparently, Crocs, let's see, they got popular. They launched in 2002. Then they slowly started to get the revenue. But I think it's the young people that it got popular amongst because it was like, I guess, like kind of a counter fashion type of statement. And these days, they just somehow became popular and caught on steam. And they almost went under in 2008, but then came back after that when Gen Z picked them up and started thinking that they're cool. By 2024, Crocs reported record annual revenue of $4.1 billion. Heavily driven by Gen Z's embrace of comfort-forward fashion and affordable self-expression.
They use it more.
Affordable self-expression. Wow. What a concept. Can you afford self-expression these days?
I can't afford it.
You sure do with the new pair of pink Crocs.
Yeah.
Wow, this is dangerous. This is the danger of talking about the modern world. Is that you don't know what you're gonna end up talking about.
I don't know how to think about it. Part of it, it's almost like, well, this is kind of stupid what we're doing. Some of the stuff, but then this is happening whether you like it or not. All these people are doing these things. And a lot of it is just because of self-driven motives, right? All these tech bros are pushing AI and because they can make money. Yeah, NVIDIA is pushing this because it's their bottom line. All these kind of productions and things are being put in place because, well, it makes them money. That's the basic general rationale for what anybody is doing in the world, right? That's the baseline thing because you can have the higher kind of pursuit of knowledge and the arts and the whatever else, but on the base level, this is how humans are driven: is profit, right? Because all they can see is, yes, I want the profits, I want the potentials, basically, right? Because like it not necessarily mean that you're gonna use that money up to buy whatever, but it's just at least on the potential you can use it to get what you want, right? That's what the dream.
Money is options.
Is options that you can have, and that's what the fundamental reality is. And sometimes I know sometimes like we might feel at times like, oh, that seems very vulgar and sort of basic. All you care is about money is money, but then it makes sense though, like, right? Because if you think about it, well, for everybody, it does make sense why people are so
it's
fixated on it.
Mandatory component. In light of how things have been going for me financially, I have been thinking about what would it look like an alternative lifestyle that is not centered around money. And essentially, I can't picture it because for any scenario you imagine, you will need money. You can think of a cheapest scenario. I think even so, like this is possible. You can buy a van and you can live in a van. That would be your biggest source of savings because housing is insane, everywhere you live compared to the salary. So that's the only thing I'm thinking at this point, is that to not even have a home, because that would be the main point of saving. But still, for everything else, what is your plan? Food and gas and parking and etc. You still need to do a steady type of some kind of job, How do you be your own business or entrepreneurship? Even all the creative success, it can take years to establish or develop, and even then it's not guaranteed. Everything else is fairly a menial job, that you have to have enough infrastructure around. So there's a lot of jobs that you won't be able to do if you live in a van. So it's all very interesting that you can't run away from the fact that you do need money.
Yeah,
I can't see it.
You can't see it either way. It doesn't matter what you kind of your aspirations and whatever, because I think I think for me, like being raised in a more or less intellectually, I wouldn't say intellectual class because my parents aren't really, researchers or whatever, but they're teachers. So meaning that my household is more or less like I'm being raised to be kind of curious about knowledge and learning and stuff like that, right? Even though, yeah, I admit I'm not that smart to kind of be into any kind of deep research about certain things, but that's the general upbringing. So, yeah, for me, I'm always curious about things around me, why things are happening this way and that way. And to those kind of people, sometimes, yeah, money can feel like almost an evil, right? Because when you pursue knowledge too much, sometimes you are kind of bookish. You're like, oh yeah, that's all these people. They're just chasing money.
That's your motivation.
They should chase something higher ideals and blah blah blah, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you actually think about it, well, it makes sense why people would do that. Why they would chase after money, because it makes perfect sense.
Because it directly translates to your life, right? Your life you will feel it. The absence and presence of money, you will definitely feel.
You definitely feel it, exactly. Because, like, I mean, yeah. I know, because I've been that poor art student. I've gone through those, and you feel it for sure. Like your health deteriorates. You don't eat right. You don't because you don't got no money, right? You feel like, oh, I had to save this. I had to save that. Like, yeah. It's not a good feeling when you're in that. It doesn't matter what your ideal is, right? At the end of the day, it's as far as the human being is concerned, your basic wire is just survive. That's the number one thing, right? So you will be it will overwrite anything else that you put to your mind to, because at a certain level, you're like, this is dangerous. You must do what you have to do to keep yourself alive before you think about anything else. So Maslow's pyramid, yeah, it's a basic foundational psychology, right? So, and sometimes it can be scary when you're at a position where you're like, there is no, you have to kind of obey the programming, right? There will be levels like where you feel like a different person. So whatever your dreams and ideals, you feel like you are no longer you. You're like another person took over your life almost, right? And they're all about survival, right? So like that's part of it. So you kind of have to kind of synergize everything in your life, kind of make it
that way. It's so you bring up the Maslow's pyramid. It kind of makes me think that this is the game progression. That there's a reason, the base of the pyramid is the physical safety and everything. But that, to me, it reminds me, like, that's kind of how levels in the game work, right? You figure out how to essentially conquer, or satisfy the base level of the game. You go to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, because you just have it covered, right? You have a structure and the plan where it's handled. Because say if you get like a stable job, and it's stable in the sense that you can do it without, burning out. You're not too crazy on the stress. There is enough money. You don't have to worry about that. Then you kind of you forget about that. You're like, okay, this is handled. You don't think about it that way. So if it's truly satisfactory, which is possible, then it will be covered. So that base will be covered. And then you naturally, it's almost like you naturally start thinking about those next things, like, ooh, what about, my love life and partnership and relationships? And you have space and time to think about those things. It's interesting, but it's a fact of life that not everybody, progresses through the whole pyramid. It's very far and wide of a circumstance where anybody can't even think about actualization, or even know about what it is and what it means.
Because I think that it's actually quite a privilege to actually do that, to kind of actualize yourself in a way to fulfill what you think your life is supposed to mean, right? It just means that you are surviving. You have already assured that you are surviving, and then you try to think about thriving, right? So that's a level of privilege that a lot of people don't have in this world. So that just means sometimes you got to be grateful for what you already have, But on that level, like, yeah, think about being artistic, right? If you want to do anything art wise, it's kind of like the best kind of environment for you to kind of be is to not be stressed out about life. That you can have time and the space to think about life. And that's where art kind of arises. It's like you have the time, but that doesn't mean that life experiences can't be a motivator, because sometimes if you have suffered in life, that could be a great motivator for you to do art. Like it can be the great drive, like all the great literatures and great arts are kind of because of suffering, right? That they can tell you about these things because they live through it, right? So it's not a cut and dry thing. But a lot of the times, though, like art does flourish when there is no existential crisis, you know? When you're just have to worry about the next meal, I don't know. I don't think you will think about art necessarily, Like, I mean, it's not gonna be you're not in the space to do it, to do the art, because you're essentially don't have that.
Yeah, and also like the biggest part for me, it always comes back to energy. I may have mentioned it before, but essentially you have a fixed amount of energy in a day, right? And even that is actually, it's tied to your hormones and stuff. For example, I recently read that in men, the testosterone is highest in the morning. So it's just a fact. So, and I felt it. Like when I read about it, I analyzed myself, like, it's true. Like, to some it may feel obvious and intuitive, but it's true. In the morning, you are essentially the most aggressive, the most energetic, the most potent and capable you, and naturally throughout the day that will wane. Well, the problem with that is that if I have a job, I feel like I don't have any interest in doing art or anything creative by the end of the day, because I'm just spent. And that's just a fact. So either you are just working to survive and there's nothing else, or very little of it, or what you're trying to do is that make your art and creative process feed you. But that's the pipe dream that a lot of people are after, right? Because it's just a reality that that's the reason of poor artist archetype exists, is because it seems to be difficult to monetize art.
Yeah, because it's easy to monetize something by which you can gauge what the value is, right, on a monetary basis. Like, yeah, if the stuff that you buy at a certain price range, you can judge it sort of, okay, how valuable this thing is for me to buy it, right? So you make those judgment calls. But for a piece of art, it's like, well, yeah, I like it, but it's $3 million.
But do you need it?
Do I need it in my life, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. Like, it's just this kind of the impulse to create versus kind of the reality of like who's there to see it, who's there to enjoy it, who's there to.
Yeah, it's all the enjoyment part is subjective, right? Like I've only bought an expensive piece of art once in my life because I just wanted to see what it feels like. I just wanted to see what it feels like to spend a little bit of money. I think I was at your place when I bought it. When I was staying in Vancouver. I bought a painting online for like $1,000 or something like that, or €1,000. So around that part, because like I liked it that much, and it was like this was really cool, and I felt like
Right.
I want to give myself a painting. And does it like, does it, in my opinion, is its value? I have no idea. Like
Right.
it's
How
a
do you gauge that?
nice intricate piece that definitely took some time to do. And I would say it's okay for that price. I think it's all right. It's not like, because it's the time. The time definitely contributes to it. Like if a person spent, like, 50 hours or something, 100 hours on a thing, that does translate to its value, because it won't be like $10 or $100, right? Because then it doesn't make sense. Why would you give it away, all your time that you put into a piece, plus all the subjective value put into it, for cheap? So in that sense, I can see, yeah, that it can cost $1,000 or a couple $1,000. But in terms of how much value it brought to me, I have no idea. Is it worth $1,000? Probably not, because it's not the same as $1,000 worth of awesome Indian food that I could buy in restaurants. It probably doesn't translate exactly to that amount of enjoyment and literal energy that I would put into my body. So what is that value that you're even getting?
It's opportunity cost, right? You got to think about, if I had money, I could have bought this, I could have bought that, I could have used this to do this and that. And that's the problem humans have, right? It's the paradox of choice. Like that's the worst thing that can happen to a person, is to having to choose, like that can be the worst feeling, because it's like, well, yeah, I could have that, I could have this. You can run all these scenarios. This is why we don't do well in modern society, because there's too many choices. If there weren't that many choices, then life would be simple, right? And
it
paradoxically,
definitely is.
You will be more happy actually if you have less choice.
Yeah.
And I think
because it's tied to certainty, essentially. When you feel, because you wouldn't even be aware that there would be other choice, right? So you feel like, okay, I'm making this limited choice, because this is why I deal with that every day these days, because creating some variations of AI art piece, you technically have a shit ton of options. You have an infinite amount of options to choose from. So I have to limit that process to myself, where I do it in pairs or something, just so I can eliminate, options from A, B. That's much easier than if you have, at the same time, you have 10 options to compare. It's extremely difficult, because you're now getting lost in all these parameters, and to keep in mind which option has which parameter, it's impossible. It's an informational overwhelm. So it's very true. I think our evolution with the modern society and culture, it's reaching a tipping point related to that, because at some point we're going to have to realize and internalize all these basic facts, and we're going to have to simplify our reality and existence, because it's getting way too complex, where you can't gauge any choice or decision by, because there's too many information bits.
Because I think the only part that's not realistic about Star Trek's kind of world is that the fact that, in that kind of, they really present it in this kind of optimistic sort of like, in the future, we can 3D print everything that you need, right? Food and, whatever else, anything you want in the world, it can be created.
100% abundance.
It's right, which means it's like a utopia almost. But, to me though, what actually would happen is much less pretty. I think even with that, people will still find ways to just waste themselves, because it's like so many choices. What do I want? I want this, I want that, I want everything. They will not be like, I'll choose a career and do this because I like to explore the universe. I'll do this because it's what drives me.
How do you navigate
Most
the choices?
people can't. Most people be like, what happened to lottery winners, right? But statistically speaking, those who win, they ruin their life because of the choices. Like, I could have everything. I can have it right now. I want to.
It's almost like, there is some kind of part that will have to get it out of its system, to get enough of like, okay, I trusted this, to get an idea of what you are even about, like what you like among anything, so if you're able to know yourself through the experimentation process, if that's your focus, I think you'll win. You'll have a handle on the situation. But if you're just thinking that, if you have this external focus on like, oh, there's something that is the thing that I pursue and I want and I like, is out there in this external something, I think that's how you get lost.
Yeah, and it's never enough. That's the thing,
Yeah.
right? What if, okay, some people do achieve that. Like they bought all the fancy cars, they bought all like, mansions and whatever. And in the end, they're not happy. They're like, yeah, something is missing because you're not doing what kind of drives you internally. You're just getting all these kind of things that are just soon be boring to you, right? Because I think people adjust, like you basically adjust to your level of comfort or whatever pretty easily. Like, it will never be enough.
Absolutely.
It will never be
I've come
enough.
to the conclusion about that on lots of material things. I mean, obviously, I haven't scratched the surface on the type of luxurious lifestyle you could have on this planet, but I've had enough things in my life, expensive technology and stuff, and even vacations, where it's like, okay, I get what's possible, and it's not that enticing to me.
No.
Because it's like, okay, you get a couple of these, a couple of those, and everything gets old. Everything gets old. That I stopped chasing it. So my spending these days is essentially just on necessities. Like if I need a new, razor, I'll buy a good one or something, just so it can serve me a couple of years. But besides that, I'm not looking to get anything because it's useless. Instead, what's the most meaningful and pleasurable thing is using my mind. Yeah, just creatively and for everything else, and just being engaged and being in the state of flow and stuff. That's the only thing that seems worthy of my time, besides just maintenance and regulation and everything else. So there has to be something there, because these are the insights I made for myself, and I'm, surely not the first or only human to come to these conclusions. But a lot of this stuff, I did come to it through my own empirical, experience, and just these are just the conclusions I made. So surely stuff like that should happen for all, most people, if they live long enough, I guess, or if they're smart enough. Is that related to that?
I don't know, man. I feel like the vast majority would rather, well, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not making a judgment call necessarily, but I'm just saying from what we're seeing happening in the world and all this kind of generally speaking, I feel like most people are not looking at it. Look, if everybody can be as sort of self-reflective, and they wouldn't.
That means that people are unconscious, that they
Exactly,
are
exactly, because
less
if we
conscious.
were self-aware, more self-aware, if all of us on Earth are more self-aware, we will not have the result that we have right now. This will not
Right.
be,
Because, I mean, but that's rational, right? Like, I'm not saying anything controversial here,
but
right?
why
Like,
is it
what?
not happening though? But why is it that the people do still follow this kind of, what would you call that? Like, I mean, a baseline of, I don't know, profit-driven incentives and
Yeah.
what have you. That's the only
It's
thing.
the chase, right? I just finished writing the kind of chapter in my spiritual book that I'm writing. It's specifically on the topic of desire and aversion, which obviously has been covered to the bone by the teachings of Buddha. But I mean, I can't argue with it, because the baseline that he outlined is that, yeah, the desire and aversion are the masters that kind of keep you in this hamster wheel that doesn't go anywhere, that doesn't lead anywhere, that doesn't lead to the thing that you're actually looking for, which is, just general peace. But it requires, let's see, what does it require? It just requires you seeing it that way. So why is it that some people see it and some people don't see it? It's the relationship. It's just your understanding of the mechanism of What would you classify? What is desire and aversion? What are those things? What kind of a class of a thing are they?
So I think with this, in this regard, how I see it is that it's running along this both desire and aversion is running along the kind of animalistic sort of baseline human response, and it developed naturally because that's kind of what our kind of the network of our neurons and everything is based on that, right? The system of perception, how we react. We have an animal instinct. We have the kind of
It's like an
reflective.
integral part of the system of even survival, right?
Yeah.
It's just kind of to optimize.
Yeah. So I constantly see this as like, okay, the human way of, let's just say that the human detection system is dumb as a rock, meaning
It
you
has a
have
job, but it's very narrow, right? It's a very
right, and
specialized.
also very crude because all
Yeah.
it is like maximum pleasure or maximum pain. That's all it is, right? So I remember as a kid when I first hurt myself, and later I started thinking, like, why does it hurt so much? Like, I know I'm hurt. I don't need this to hurt this much. You can just kind of
Yeah, switch it off.
lower the intensity, please. Okay, like it's like a notification. I don't need the phone to ring like
Yeah.
that loud.
Served its purpose to bring my
But
attention to it.
But this is a foolproof system though, because only by hurting so much will you know exactly with no failure that you are in danger, right? This is the body's way of telling you like
And that you want to avoid it in future.
GTFO, whatever you have to do. This is the bad situation, right? And that negative imprint, you remember it a lot more than pleasure. So that, in fact, fear and aversion is one of the biggest factor that drives human behavior, right? We're trying to get away from the pain, right? We understand it more than we understand pleasure, you know? So that's how I see it. It's like these two emotions or feelings or whatever, you know, both desires and aversion is kind of just this baseline thing that we develop evolutionarily. So it's very easy to kind of be wrapped up in this because that's how we are is how the system is designed, right? In this kind of crude caveman manner, like pleasure, pain, that's it. That's all you're working with, right? One is good, one is bad. So get more good, get less bad. That was the whole thing for you to ensure your survival, right? This is kind of how animals kind of operate, more or less. Like they are able to detect what's painful and what's not painful, and they're trying to avoid the painful, and but they're developing more and more perception systems. So like sometimes animals are very shrewd in terms of their detection. Like they can detect the predators before they even get to them. Right? That's how they escape because these are the evolutionary pressure to push you to kind of survive more and more. So that's how I see it. So meaning that it's very hard for us to escape this pain and pleasure cycle because that's how we are kind of evolved was what our psychology and base level kind of instincts are built in. So for a person to kind of go beyond that takes a lot of energy, self-awareness, and things that are not normal to let's just say the everyday survival kind of um way of survival, you know? It goes kind of beyond that, right? So it takes a lot to kind of be self-aware, and outside of that, because we feel as uncomfortable as we are with pain, we are kind of comfortable dealing with it in a way because that's just naturally how we deal with everything, right? Recognizing what's good, recognizing what's bad, and just get more good and less bad. That's the operating system. But for you to kind of be able to judge that in a meta manner, you gotta go beyond just your own consciousness and just kind of like zoom out and project a sort of kind of, you know, like the bird's eye view of yourself, right? That's whole
Yes, it's
nother.
always we keep coming back to this meta-cognition skill as being the best thing because it's true in whichever system and kind of circumstance and dynamic you find yourself in, it would always benefit from this meta perspective, because that perspective is always more accurate than the one beneath it, because it evaluates the whole system with you in it and your behavior from a more objective standpoint of view than is just your direct experience, because your direct experience is subjective and muddied by your role in that thing. Because for in your regular mode, you're identified exactly with essentially your role in an environment. You think you are, your career or something, but that's not exactly the case, because obviously you can abstract yourself from the situation and look at it and see like, oh, if I see it, then I'm not it. And then you can make more valuable and more rational adjustments to either your behavior or your plan or your values through that. So yeah, that skill still rules because it's kind of universal that way, right?
Yeah, but think about how everybody, well, most people, in their everyday life, they're not thinking about those things. They still get angry at the traffic jams and these things that are affecting them on a daily basis, and this stuff like we happen to all of us. Like sometimes, yeah, if I get stuck in traffic, I'm like feel frustrated, but I understand that's just the system. That's how it is. It is designed this way, and if you design the roadway like this is what's going to happen. You have a boom of population. The infrastructure is not keeping up. Stuff like that.
Sometimes,
right?
I don't, and the thing is, it definitely happens to everybody, and it still happens to me sometimes, but it is definitely connected somehow to the hormones, like how rested your nervous system is, how like the optimal state. Because it's funny, man. Some days I'm completely zen and everything is great no matter what happens.
Yeah.
But some situations, it's like some days I feel so sensitive and I see myself like I'm getting pissed off, I'm getting energetic, and I'm getting angry, but there's nothing you can do about it. So, and it happened the other day. It did happen. I was in a state like that. Like these days, it's rare. It's really rare. But when it happens, it's almost like it's comedic to me. So I was driving somewhere and I was in that wired up mood, and I was properly pissed off.
Yeah, everything you see is just gonna piss you off, right?
Yeah. It was hilarious, dude. It was like I was waiting for a turn on the road. I turned somewhere and I literally had to yell, like as I'm driving, like yell, curse, and everything. But it felt so good. Like it actually felt like I'm releasing some kind of energy.
Right.
And after that, I could really calm down. So sometimes even something like that happens when there's some kind of pent up something.
Yeah.
And I find it like, it's actually not a bad way to do it. Like, perhaps not on the road like that, but that's the only way I can think about it, because you are in your own car. At least nobody can hear you yell, because that's not a bad way to do it. If you just take a little drive and just say all the things that you need to say, in a way that you want to say it, it kind of feels like self-therapy, in a way. It's pretty cheap. So, but it seems like you gotta do it sometimes like that, because just, I don't know, it feels like something migrates from, among humans, whether it's emotional charges or something like that, because I don't know how else to explain it, because normally I'm just this, more or less peaceful, normal guy. But then if you can have a day like that, when you, like, what does that mean? You're suddenly a different person who's just like mad for some time. What is that?
You see, this is the problem when in the US, when they give guns to people, where that one day you're so pissed off, it's like, you know what? I'm gonna shoot up the entire fucking place. That's what happens.
That's Bill Burr's bit, I think, because we all get sad sometimes, and that's the great argument. I think that's the inescapable argument, that it's true. We all get sad and mad sometimes, and impulsive.
Right. And then the gun's right there.
Yeah.
It's right there. You can just let
Dude, it's
let
a recipe for disaster right there from that. Like, if I had a gun all this time, if I lived in America, I'd probably be dead at this point. This is the reason I'm not ever gonna,
American.
even attempt it, because I know myself well enough at this point to
It's
not
like, I'm
even put
sorry,
myself in
I
this
can't handle
situation.
that. I can't handle that much.
I can't handle that level of freedom. Okay.
Yeah, that's too free. Okay, because
It's too free.
yeah, or is so free that I know I will not be free in that country because I know what I will do. You know. Because imagine when you're angry, dude, you're not thinking at all. You don't think about
Something
anything.
else takes over.
It's like somebody must pay for this shit
for
happening
this
to me,
injustice.
right? And if you have that way to do it, I mean, if you have that thing just right there for you to do that, sometimes you can just go through. You will just go through with that, and
You will not. Yeah, there's no going to be thinking. I mean, you can see examples of this in court, right? It literally happens where people are like, I don't know what I was thinking, like I don't remember what happened. It's that, because that's how it works sometimes.
Yeah,
sometimes some kind of other intelligence or something, because the intelligence is the overall system, right? It takes over, and you're not who you think you are. You're not the guy who's in control of it all the time.
Exactly, because also, see, this also goes back to society in general as well, because each of us have that kind of shades of darkness within us, because it is bred into us, because
that's the reason there's a psychological shadow exists.
Right, in the past we all been killers, right? I mean, you got, for survival, sometimes you got to do that, right? Both against the natural world, hunting animals, or other people who did you wrong. I mean, it's been happening. So we all have that kind of impulse for violence and some kind of outburst. So if a society does not have all the necessary pressure valve to make people still behave in a civilized manner, that's what will happen. This is what happens in third world countries sometimes. It's like, violence unfolds because of you don't have these things to kind of keep it in check, right? Because some of these places do not have a system of justice, and people take the justice to their own hand, because it's like, well, okay, if the courts are not going to help me, if they allow, in their mind, the criminal to go, because there's insufficient evidence, that we're going to do that justice for it, right? So people will do that. Vigilantism, right? So this goes, because that's the thing, right? Everybody is involved with everybody else. In this world, like, I know sometimes, especially for introverts, you just feel like, well, I don't want to interact with that many aspects of the world. I just want to be left alone. But you can't. You can't be left alone, because you're not alone. You can't. You are part of the system, and you can't really get out of it necessarily, because we all have a job, we all have a career or a business or whatever.
Like, people will react to you. People will see you and will want to do stuff with you or to you, because they just, okay, this is the guy that I want to interact with or something.
Right, because your survival based on other people, right?
Yeah.
Supply and demand. If you're doing a business, and if you're working on a job, then it's the job, right? Is there a demand for the job, and therefore I'm still gonna be employed, and your livelihood depends on that. So in a way, you can't really be out there and just be like, okay, I'll just buy myself. I mean, some people do that, right? But not many people can afford. Because see, this is the other thing. Back in the day, people don't really have that much free time, because they got to do farming, they got to do all these things to kind of get the basic.
You kind of get locked into that lifestyle, right?
Yeah, imagine if you're a hunter-gatherer. Man, the amount of time they spend on gathering food,
it's your whole life.
It's like 12 hours or something, a whole day. You got to be doing that, every single day. If you don't have sufficient storage of potential food energy, right? You got to gather them, you got to prepare them. Like, that's a very hard life, But conversely, you do have a more peaceful life in a way internally, because there's not that much to think about. Yeah, there's not much to think about. You don't think about, oh, what am I gonna do tomorrow or whatever. It's like, well, tomorrow I know exactly what I'm gonna do, right? So that's why in agrarian society, like, life seems peaceful, even boring, right? But that's when everybody are growing crops or raising cattle and whatever. But now we outsource that to 1% of the population. The vast majority of people live in the cities. We have specialized jobs. So our anxiety are just kind of like, yeah, it's going to be more and more, we're more and more anxious because we are no longer in control of the food source anymore, right? It's almost like if anything happens, then we're kind of screwed if you don't have a storage of food and whatever. That's why you have doom preppers, right? They build bunkers and store all the food because they think, oh well, what if some big thing happened? And they're not wrong, right? I mean, if something big happens, we're all kind of screwed because if all you rely on are the supermarkets and these kind of chains of logistics, then if that logistics shut down, then yeah, where are you gonna get that energy? Where are you gonna get all this stuff, right? So as advanced as we are, sometimes like this is built on really kind of shaky grounds almost. And now we're disrupting all of that with new technologies and people are just they're running way too fast right now. They're just like running ahead thinking that, oh, we're gonna make big monies because of AI and
it feels like this is the pendulum swung from that, boredom to definitely the absence of boredom to the point where it's a problem because everything has an extreme, right? And I think these days we're definitely at an extreme of too much excitement, I guess, of too many reasons. So, I mean, the pendulum always swings. So we're gonna, it's just what is the tipping point at this point? This is what I curious about because it is surely this is too much.
Yeah, it's kind of getting to a point where it's about to swing to the highest level of the zenith. It's gonna coming down because you feel like right now, right? With the economy being what it is right now worldwide, I think people are seeing the cracks. It's like it's not as what you represent what the tech bro tell you. Like, oh yeah, the future looks bright because AI is gonna change everything. Blah blah blah. But what's the cost, right? Like everything would need to change because you no longer will have job as jobs. If efficiency can be outputted in such a drastic manner by AI, then yeah, a lot of the jobs are going to be no longer.
I think, we might come to a conclusion that we don't want AI to do these jobs because the jobs are so, because for a lot of people, the jobs are really also all their social life, or most of their social life. It's undeniable because that's just what jobs are, really. There are social, whether it's, it's present there. So now if we're cutting all of that out, so these are the secondary, and third degree effects from such changes. So who's thought about all of that stuff? It's not as simple as like, oh, let's make AI do this work. Well, now we're eliminating whole sections of just human, life, human environments, really. So what are we going to do with that?
Yeah, this is a disaster waiting to happen because if what I think is if like this is my opinion, right? I think that humans cannot adjust to utopias. This is why utopia doesn't exist because we can't. It's like that Matrix scene, right? I think the Smiths were telling like, we have many versions, but you guys don't like it because it's too perfect. You guys can't live in you want this grimy, this sort of imperfect world because that makes sense, because with AI, if everything is being replaced, if efficiency is kind of up to the max, then there's no efficiency to speak of. There's no longer needed for efficiency. Then how do you make money? Because see, how I see it is all economic input and output are arbitrage, like I said before. Is because of information asymmetry. But when AI can get that information to the same level, there's no arbitrage opportunity. You no longer can make money anymore. So money will have to be not mean anything. Like in the future, if AI are so sufficient at producing all these stuff, it means there's no longer an economy to speak of. You don't need money then. That will have to be the case for that to be.
Yeah, all of these, eventually, essentially, that it would have to be, the utopia somehow needs to be already in perfect form. It has to appear in that perfect form for it to be possible. But the way there seems to be it doesn't seem to be there. It's a possible. It doesn't seem to be possible for humanity to survive on the way to utopia.
Yeah, because the problem is people will be like, what will they do with their life? I know for myself, if I don't have nothing to do, I'm doing a lot of bad stuff to myself, like overindulging in stuff and no purpose, no sense of motivation. Like if that were given
that
to
would
me,
be
then
completely new, unprecedented environment. You would have to. So it's almost like if this happened like right now, you would literally be like, okay, what do I do now? You would have to reframe your
right.
whole existence, your goals, and everything. You would have
Yeah.
to consider, like, okay, what is there out right now? Where do I go?
Yeah.
Who do I speak to? What do I do? Because it's like a new game at that point, right? The
Right.
rules completely changed.
So there has to be some kind of institution to be like, okay, so we're gonna give you some kind of occupation. It's not a job, but like we're gonna
If you
find,
want it, yeah.
right? There has
It,
to be an institution that does that. And it also means that money will no longer be a thing. Because that has to be. Because otherwise, if there is a need for money, then it means that the arbitrage opportunity has to be present. Otherwise, how do you make money?
you know what I would do? I think I know what I would do. I think I'd go study something. I'd go to university
Right.
for sure.
But the thing is, some people are like, I don't know, like their baseline thing is almost like they can't adjust to that kind of environment where they're not curious enough. They
Yeah.
don't want to put
Yeah,
in the hard
there
work.
will be all kinds of people for sure.
Right. They're just gonna waste away their life because it's like, well, yeah, if I don't have the work, then I have nothing. There's nothing that I want to do. There's nothing besides the whole pleasure seeking. That was it. They would be terrible for them, right?
But that's like, I think that the homogeneous ultimate utopia in that sense is not possible because everybody is at their own stage of life. For some people, the partying and, substances, they can't get enough of that. But for some, they went through that and they've had enough. And they literally like, okay, I'm done with that. I've had my fill. I'm not interested anymore. So everybody will have that for sure. But that
But
just
even
means
if
that everybody would still have to go through what they have to go in order to get sated, and get to the next thing.
yeah,
That's not something
even
you'd be able to regulate.
even if you have that, even if let's just say that's achievable, what's the transition look like? You can't just all of a sudden, okay, the economy gone, no longer need money. You can't do that, right? There's no way that suddenly just in one instant you can just cut away the whole economy about oil, the need for oil, the production.
No.
You can't do it. So there has to be a transition, but how do you transition into that? Because some people will lose their job. They'll be so pissed off, so angry, they're gonna start
I think
violence.
that's what it looks like. No transitions has ever happened without, causing complete chaos and dysregulation. So yeah, some of us will have to
So it means there has to be a
go
world
through
war.
the grinder.
There has to be a world war, and enough people have to die. Until then, they're like, yeah, okay, now you embrace the new paradigm, because otherwise, they're always going to be a loser in this battle, and some people will not. Imagine if you whole life you work at this thing, you have this knowledge about this specific field, and you're outdated now. So AI took your job, and if you're not sufficiently able to transition, if all you know is what you knew, then you can't find a new job.
It will be another case of the survival of the fittest, and the fittest being the one who can adapt the best. It will
Right.
be just that. So it's still evolution at play.
Exactly, but that means chaos, right? It means some country would just erupt in a revolution or whatever, because they just won't accept that. It's like, no, we can't allow this to happen, or what have you. So I don't really see a peaceful transition, even if that's the thing that we're going for. Like the AI gonna be changing the entirety of society and all that. Sure, but how do you transition? It's because this is different than before. You're replacing people's reason for existence almost for some people, right? You're taking away their jobs. It's not like before all the technology actually helped the output. It helped giving people new jobs, new way of working and stuff like that. This is taking away your job because you're no longer needed to perform this thing.
Yeah, there will be only be needed the the people who service the AI and infrastructure for it, right? And
right. And this
whatever
many
robots
people
are not able to replace.
And this many people on Earth, you're telling me half of them can be artists? I don't know. Or most of them can be artists? If job is not a thing, if I say
But
if money is not a thing,
even if they can or attempt to be, then that also will change entirely the landscape of art and what's possible, because it will be flooded with
yeah,
all kinds of
meaning
nonsense.
the level
very...
will be very high. Either you have to be technically so superior to all these other people, meaning that the bar will be high. What's considered art, it has
but
to be.
Perhaps it will become a new types of art would be created, or whole new arenas, because maybe if that utopia type of technological environmental utopia happens, the human minds would technically be freed up potentially to do the thing that they're suited to do most, which is creating new games. So maybe, our art sphere will explode with that. We'll using AI and technology too. We could invent whole worlds. Just think about the concept of VR, right? The virtual reality, and how much stuff you can do on that front. If you were to develop that further and bring it up to its maximum point and make a lifelike virtual game, which is, we have sci-fi movies about that. That could be the next frontier, where
you see,
the imagination is the limit.
But it's like, I will be like, no, I don't remember. Is that was the case from Idiocracy, the movie where a lot of people are like addicted to VR, or was that animated film? It was like Wall-E, I think. It was Wall-E that was.
Well, there's been many. It's a
where
popular concept.
all the people are just like on wheelchairs.
Yeah,
and then VR all the time. I will probably be addicted to that because it's like, this is better than real life.
Because it will be too good. Yes,
it will be too good. And also the other thing is, if AI Android become a thing and sufficiently lifelike, robot girlfriend, I'll be getting that. Like, I know myself. Like, I'll be like, nope, I'll not be getting with the real woman, because
I think I will not be getting it just for that reason, because it's too good.
But if it's possible,
I already experienced it with just video games. Okay.
I don't know if I can control myself. The same way you can't go to the U.S. and live in the U.S. because the guns is too free. Okay, it's the same.
You're gonna have to shelter yourself. You're gonna have to go live down in the forest and just shore yourself out from all this information.
That's the real challenge. That's a real challenge. To be zen in that world, be like, you can have all you want, but
that's the full danger of desire and aversion. Because you want to touch the fishies.
That's catering to the best that you can even possibly think about. Because imagine almost real-like replicant, right? But you can change it to fit your needs, right? Anything you want, all your fantasy or whatever. Like, people fucking will want that. That's the problem with humanity. Like, we want all the fishies. We want touch all the fishies.
There will definitely a therapeutic window there where people, will be able to get stuff out of their system, because, everybody has some dark desires and all kinds of stuff that they're there. They're there, and they're always pent up, and not everybody.
Just see what happened with the whole Epstein thing, right? Like, if that's basically that. People who can't get away with it, they will try to do things that they're not supposed to be doing, right? That's what the level of power can.
What is that desire, though? It's almost like,
the
big thing is, I guess, what's forbidden, right? But also, that seems to be connected to curiosity itself. Like, what is that like? What is that about?
Right, and for some people, it is like that. There are people who.
That's curiosity, like, killed the cat. So there's also another force that is quite dangerous. So there's got to be a little addendum to Buddhism, I think, that we'll need to make, because it's not just desire and aversion. What is curiosity? Is curiosity a desire for something, or is this a separate force?
It is a desire, right?
It is a desire for what? Novelty?
Well, that
Stimulation?
or knowledge or understanding,
Knowledge?
right?
Okay, that's interesting. So
Because you
this is like
live in a world that's unpredictable. You live in a world that with full of unknowns. So your desire to know more is a
okay.
desire. It's just a
It's a
desire
desire.
to
True.
have more control, have more handle, and
That's like it's almost like tied to survival because that's where to me, I mean, I am very critical of these spiritual teachings that I've been learning about these days because I don't know, I don't trust anything these days. But that's where analyzing it logically like that, if you're even putting curiosity and like desire for knowledge and everything into that camp and you are trying to distance yourself from the desire and aversion, you could then achieve that, state of peace. But because of the outside world and the fact that there can be stuff happening to you, in the world, and things can be advancing in a way where if you don't know about it, you'll die. That seems to be a problem. So maybe distancing yourself from that in the old world was more possible. But these days, are you more at the advantage than where you know more stuff, or you are more at the disadvantage if you know more stuff because you're kind of overwhelmed by this soup of information that creates anxiety in you? How do you gauge what's better? How do you go away from curiosity? That seems to be crazy to me. That's because curiosity to me is almost like synonymous with life itself. Because if you just drop it off, we should drop off. I don't care what else is there. I just prioritize peace, where I don't chase anything and I don't try to change anything about my situation. Is that sustainable? Or is that for just parts of like self-regulation where you spend a little bit of time? Because these teachings are talking about this from the standpoint like where you're done, right? Okay, no more
right,
desire, no more aversion.
right.
And what? You're done for life? You good? Is that possible? Is that the claim? Because that seems to be
Where
the claim,
that
but that
seems to be
doesn't
the
seem to
claim,
be.
where if you meditate to that in the right way, to the right level, then you can escape that. Isn't that the claim?
But that's like a state of mind. Like I can kind of see it, so I can kind of drop into that state, where okay, I'm fine, whatever. I'm feeling hungry. I can drop into a state where it's not really a problem.
But it's not
But
a
it's not like a
natural state.
sustainable,
Yeah, it's
and
not a
it's
natural state. You can't maintain it all the time.
well, that's the argument is that with practice you
You
are able to
can.
maintain it, right? So that's the argument. I mean, and even if that's not possible, just the mere fact of striving towards it, I think is valuable enough. But maybe that's the only thing that's supposed to happen. Because as long as you are striving towards that, that will counterbalance all the impulses and instincts, just the striving itself. Because if you don't do that at all, you're definitely going to tip over on the other side. Maybe that's the true wisdom.
Yeah, it's like it's
It's like
like having
your vector of efforts, right? Again, it goes back to values, go back to what you're trying to keep as your North Star.
right, but it's like it's this assumption that that is the goal, right? That you assume that, yep, that is the kind of the goal you want to set for yourself to kind of go after that. Because if we
Well,
imagine,
that's the kind of where the credibility of Buddhism and such teachings comes from, is that they're thousands of years old, and there's been many, many generations of thinkers and luminaries who have gone and developed this thought further. So, because for you even to study Buddhism, it will gonna take a lifetime. But and it's very logical. It's all based on logic. So you would have to send. It is an assumption in the sense that for you to test it, you would have to
do
get.
it
You have to do it. You
yourself.
have to test it.
Yeah.
Empirically test to get experience for it. But the tricky part is that yes, it can even take your whole lifetime. That's the paradox.
Right. And I think, naturally this kind of way of thought arises. It makes sense to me because if you think about a human being in the in human history, because a lot of the time society were preoccupied with surviving, building these new technologies so we can survive better. But for the most part, people are busy surviving, so they don't have that many times by which to think about kind of, especially Buddhism, right? Because other religions are like, okay, well, the God promised, you know, the promised land, this and that. Like, it's easy to kind of buy into that, right? You're like, okay, yeah, sure, we see it. But Buddhism is like, well, you actually had to do work. You had to use your mind to kind of transcend yourself, and that's a high ask for a lot of people, because like, how do you do that, right? Because it's easy to believe Jesus is the way. It's easy to believe that, okay, the Lord is coming, and this is they paint a picture of the world, like this will
Yeah, but
happen.
there's still work there. Like you do have to work with your impulses, right? You have to adhere to certain rules and standards. It's still work.
Right. But with Buddhism is a lot different. It's like, imagine you're being taught, okay, just sit still, right? Just sit still and stop thinking. This is
It's
not
just
like,
different practices. It's different focus and practices, but there's still certain culture and rules and norms
right.
about and
But
rituals, right?
how I see it is that because naturally human mind are curious, like anytime you have free time, right? I think this is what happens is that beyond survival, when people got more time, then when they can afford more time, they start thinking about these questions, right? Like you were saying about curiosity. Why is it that we're curious about this and that? Well, yeah, we just have the time to think about these things. Am I alive? What's my reason to being alive? What's the reason? And these are things naturally arises. So that's why religion come around, right? To explain away these things if you believe in it, right? So I think naturally is that curiosity leading people to kind of formulate, I guess this is what happened with the Buddha, right? He wonders, oh yeah, all this suffering, why is it that? Right? He's seeing the world and say, okay, this is the way things are, but why? But why though? Right? That he asks enough of that question, he
It's
start getting into,
it's an actual inspection of reality, right? It's like, okay, what is that? How does this happen? How is it appearing in the world? It's really this scientific process of
right?
examination
Because
of
all other religions
life.
have assumption. They assume there's a heaven, I mean, I guess maybe Buddhism also do that because, but at least the way it unfolds is like, well, you actually have to almost scientifically explore your own mind, right? And what does
Yeah,
it
yeah.
mean
The
to,
biggest thing that going for Buddhism that's true, like even at the very entry levels, you can inspect stuff with your own faculties and awareness. That's my favorite part about it, is that you can, funny enough, like I've seen some debates with novices and with young people who were very like resistant to these teachings, but they were very resistant to them, so they were not accepting these ideas. But the dialogue was so strange because you were literally asked, okay, just in your own experience, look at what happens when you have a thought. Does the thought come to you, or do you like make it? And they were convinced. They were like, no, I sit down and I make the thought. And they were asked, like, okay, how do you do it? Like, explain it, because we don't understand. And they would just essentially weasel out of the question. So there's some kind of resistance to even like the self-image, or self-understanding, which is trying to preserve itself, like an ego that is based on some kind of illusion or something, that is so resistant to it that we're like, no, I that's not what's happening. You guys are wrong. But when they're asked to justify their position, they can't even do it. They just completely move away from the question, which means that there is some kind of psychological resistance or blindness on an unconscious level. So all that is to say that, yeah, even to investigate the reality and your own mind like that, it requires some kind of bravery and honesty. But even that, at this point, I'm not sure if anything that you can observe like that, is that just a lens, an interpretation of doing so? Because so many people are, living by different frameworks, and they can't seem to detect anything wrong with their framework. This is why I'm like, these days I'm fairly conflicted in terms of is all of it just pick and choose your lens and your adventure? Like, because how is none of it comes out as ultimate truth at the end of the day, you know?
There is no ultimate truth. I don't know,
Maybe.
because it feels like there's a lot of different theories, right? There are even
Yeah.
theories about how all your life are just an instance of of almost like a hallucination of
Right.
a change in particle positions of the quantum world. Like that's basically what your life is. There's theories, right? You talk about theories, that's theories.
Could be anything.
Right? It could be anything. It could be all these kind of things that could be real. It could be like
It could be a brain in a jar on a shelf of some alien
right. It's
backwater facility.
when they talk about quantum, it's always this kind of quantum fluctuation, it's this random thing, and then maybe something happened within that itself. Who knows? Like, so that's the problem, right? It's like I think I have that's part of the problem that I have in terms of for me to kind of anchor myself in any sort of um I just say spiritual discipline, for example, right? Like I can see the value of Zen, I can see the value of all these kind of different wisdoms that they're very valuable, but like yeah, but in terms of making myself kind of
Believe anything.
yeah, we are creatures of our environment. I'm not
What
raised that way. So it's like
what is the most basic truth that you can say that it is true or real? Because I propose that at least it's the fact that there's experience. There is experience, right? You're experiencing something. That is the base truth, right? We can all agree to that.
is it though?
Are you, yo, are you not experiencing this right now? Am I alone here? This is don't trip me out like that. Are you an NPC? You're not experiencing stuff
No, I
right
mean
now?
I will want to say yes,
Okay.
but is that the ultimate answer though? Like that's
No, that's like I'm saying. Like there's
definitively
some kind of base that we can all agree to. Is that I'm experiencing something, you're experiencing something. There's a shared experience, but there's definitely experience because
I
there's
guess even
registration of it,
let's just
right?
say even if it is virtual, I just say even if everything is a simulation, then yeah, it's still an experience,
It's still
right?
experience. Whatever you call it, yeah, it's still because it's not nothing. So
Okay.
we can start from that, you know. That's the basics. That there's definitely experience.
But
That's one truth.
why are you experiencing it though?
Well, that's
See,
yeah,
that's the question,
that's a
right?
whole different story. Um, before I forget, we were talking about the Maslow theory, and I was kind of looking it up as because it's pretty old at this point in that theory, and throughout the time, it actually has received a fairly good amount of criticism, even in just in the field of psychology. So it's not like it's again the truth. It's
Right.
just one of the interpretations. But since then, there's been some modern alternatives that have been used in mainstream use in terms of, kind of describing the psychology of and hierarchy of needs. One of them is the self-determination theory, and its core focus is three basic psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And that sounds pretty good. Like these are all pretty important parts of of human needs and values. Everybody likes autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
Competence feels great, when you're good at something, it feels amazing. It gives you some, you know, confidence too. And then relatedness, yeah, you do want to be in a tribe of like-minded people. It does feel good as well, for sure. I felt that. Um, there's another one called ERG theory: existence, relatedness, and growth. Again, kind of similar to the other one. I mean, existence, that's we're already there, so that's a given. Relatedness, like in the other one, and growth, kind of similar to something in between autonomy and competence, I would say. And there was another one that was talking about it has emphasis on purpose, virtue, and transcendence as an ongoing process, not end states atop the ladder. And I do like that one because it seems like life is kind of infinite, from the point of experience, because you've never been dead in your experience. You only feel, it feels like you're just infinitely living on forever, right?
Right.
And throughout this time, we don't even live for that long, but it definitely feels like the whole of life, at least in our time, has been just this one big transcendence from one paradigm and age to another one. And it's so rapid at this point that it's just, we don't even notice it, but it's technically true. It's just this constant change and update that you have to adjust to and deal with. But if you even look at throughout the whole course of human civilization, that's always been happening too. It's just at different speeds.
Yeah, because every single person who ever lived, they were dealing with their environments, their society, their, all these things. So that's the fascinating thing about history. Right? You can learn about how these people kind of how they deal with what they were experiencing.
Yeah,
And
it's like an evolution, right?
There's definitely some reoccurring things and things that which you can learn that we can constitute as wisdom, right? Because they dealt with it before. But the problem is humans have short memories and sometimes history repeat because we just don't remember how it went down. And somehow we didn't learn the history lesson that happened, and therefore we kind of repeat it in the same kind of similar manner, right? Because it's kind of like that. What humans are just, I don't know. Sometimes we don't learn. It's like the baseline is always kind of seem to repeat all this, and that's kind of
Yeah, for sure. There's something about the fact, because even in my own experience, the memory doesn't work as like, it's not like you have, it's not like Tetris where everything is perfectly based on the previous layer. It's much more chaotic and disorganized that way because, yeah, for sure, I don't remember some insights, some lessons. They don't really get internalized in the sense where, like, oh, you don't repeat these mistakes anymore. It doesn't really work that way.
Because it's like some stuff, like when you read these wisdom, it's like, oh wow, that is profound. That is, but then
yeah.
a couple of days after, it's like, well, I don't remember what that was even. It's like, how do I translate that into my own way of life, right? Because
that's why, like in traditions, like in Buddhism, you do literally study the sutras and everything, like recurrently.
Because it's like the wisdom can be something that's said by a person who experienced it, but as a person who hasn't experienced it, you have a total different. It's a total different interpretation, and to really, I think for a person to really learn, you have to be like you actually like the best lesson are the one that you experienced yourself, and it basically validated the wisdom, and then you're like, oh, okay, I see, they're totally right. I did not see it that way when I first read the wisdom, but now that I experience this thing myself, is like, okay, yeah, this is exactly what it is. But the problem is, you have graduated to the camp of the wisdom, but that only for you though, because another person encountering the same thing will not arrive at the same thing unless they kind of experience it in a similar manner, right?
Unless they have both the access to such conclusions and go through the experience. So it's both, right? It's both the knowledge and the wisdom that you learn about, because wisdom essentially is like a lens as well. It's a way to interpret a situation and extrapolate certain lessons from it. Kind of zoom out and see, like, okay, there's all these components and this is the agent, and if it combined like that, this is what happens. So if you know all this, if you had the perfect memory, okay, I remember the situation, you won't be in it again, right? You'll navigate it differently. And something like that does happen if it's just fresh in your mind, right? Because it's kind of how learning happens. For example, this is what I've been dealing with in chess. Like anything, you can study chess for your whole lifetime, because what will happen, like how you actually progress, you get used to certain scenarios, you will know certain moves and patterns, you will recognize them. And if you keep engaging with it, you will have it at the top of your mind. And this is how you become a better chess player. You're like, oh, okay, I've seen this pattern. Like the best chess player, Carlos Magnusson, Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah.
he knows has an image of historical games, full games in his head. So if you show him like a board from some of those games, he will know which game from which people in which year it is. Imagine how insane that is.
Oh,
Like it's
wow.
just a snapshot of a game. It's like, oh yeah, that's Kasparov versus this. Imagine how much stuff you have to memorize for that. But that's memorization. You do have to encounter it enough time where it becomes like internalized for you. So there's still definitely all the learning it has to go through repetition. Like you have to repeat the thing enough times before you can internalize and really say that you understand and know it.
Yeah, so that's why, individual experiences are basically unique to every individual, and nobody can really repeat that. Even if you do similar thing, you can do the same thing, but you can arrive at, maybe similar but still distinct kind of conclusions about a certain, thing. That's why there's so many different lives. Different people carry different lives. You see all this kind of colorful sort of display of humanity, like it's always is definitely something different. But like you see this vast kind of like, if you see this about life, it's like all the people out there that you see their kind of a reflection of yourself, right? It's like you see their suffering, you see their success, you see their, that does belong to them, but you can see how what they're doing trying to do the same thing as you, more or less, right? They're trying to figure out what their life means. What does it mean to, some aspect they will be more successful, some aspect they will not be. And it's kind of like, this is the trippy thing for me. It's like, okay, yeah, you can talk about these theories about, okay, quantum fluctuation, like, oh, everything is not real. I'm just in some kind of imaginary whatever. But what about all these other people? They seem to be as alive as I am, and I can interact with these people. I can exchange information with them. And you're saying, like, I
All
get
of
it.
this is imagined.
Like, yeah, I get it. If I'm an imaginary thing, okay. But like, you're telling me that these people are NPCs and they are like have no
Essentially, so
agencies, and
yeah, the argument is that there can be a virtual game done so well that you can't detect that it is virtual. That's the argument, right?
yeah.
How you gonna test that? Like that's what kind of a test would you need to make to verify this claim? How would you test this? Because we had this conversation numerous times.
Yeah.
I think you're an NPC, you think I'm an NPC. What do we do about that? How do we prove it to each other? It's the Spider-Man meme.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And the reality is that we're all NPCs.
Yeah,
That
maybe
would be
that's
the
what it is.
trippiest stuff
right?
of all, yeah.
But like, the game is so well made that these people have lives. They have their own histories and, backgrounds and problems, and
Yeah,
like, imagine a
so
simulation
detailed, down
where,
to quarks, right? That's the
so
level
that
of detail in
means,
the
okay,
simulation.
so they're experiencing this the same as me on the
Yeah.
same level of plane and whatever, but we're all NPCs. We're all assimilated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But why?
Somebody set it up that way.
It's like God's I don't know, sandbox. Like, see, hey, this is
Yeah.
interesting. Oh, this is happening. Oh, that's cool. This is like
Pretty much.
basically God is hooked on drama. It's like, ooh, this
Yeah.
is interesting. That guy killed that guy,
I mean,
chopped him up, and then dump it in the river, thinking that he can escape. Ooh, this is interesting.
yeah.
That's
It's like
basically
an
what it is, right?
infinite theater. Imagine if this world was like a sandbox like that, and you could zoom in into any part of it. Dude, imagine how much stuff happening at all the corners of the world.
It's
Infinite
happening
movies.
right now. It's
Infinite, yeah.
like, he's seeing right now what's happening. Like, oh yeah, the USA is gonna attack Iran. I want to see what happens. Oh,
Yeah.
holy shit, he did that! Oh my god, he killed the
then you
supreme
zoom in
leader.
into some random alley and you see a guy aggressively pissing in front of the other two guys,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like that's a whole other movie
Yeah.
that you can suddenly be in. You know, the
Yeah.
perspectives, it's the dimensions. It's so much entertainment, for sure. It could easily be that way.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the problem, right? It's like, well, it could be anything. If you think
Yeah.
about it, because nobody can prove you wrong. Nobody can prove you like, oh well, that's your theory is wrong. You know?
Yeah. Plus, I mean,
I mean,
that's
some theory maybe, right? But there are other times where, well, yeah, how would you know it? How would you know this is not the reality?
that's why, like, usually you don't prove the negatives, right? Because it's you can anything can be, and that's not the way to approach anything. But yeah, the best we can do is have a theory and then propose a way to test or verify it. Because I'm just curious, like, yeah, how would you start verifying this theory? Because I mean, these days, there's plenty of folks that they're claiming like manifestation is real and that you can literally impact and affect reality with your mind. But I mean, if that was the case, why wouldn't that be much more known? Like, dude, if I learned how to levitate, I'm going to be the most famous person in the world tomorrow, you know? Because that's just, what do you mean? Why would that not be known? That's the most damning part about all of these people, that I can only assume that they're just, you know, that's the fantasy. They're fantasizing about it, because what would, like, it would be pretty simple to test. But a lot of these people, they're claiming like, oh yeah, you just do that. You go like think about it, dream about it, and it happens. I don't know. I've never seen anything like that. That doesn't really work that way. I've been dreaming about a hot girlfriend for many years, dude. Somehow it's not happening. What's
you
going
and me
on?
both, bro.
So what's up with that?
And it changes every time too. Try to craft it in your mind, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the perfect one, but they never materialize.
Yeah. So what's up with that? Somehow manifestation doesn't work there.
This is bullshit.
Yeah, bullshit. I mean, the breadth of topics is a classic deep fried spork recipe where we covered about 50 different topics today.
Yeah,
So
I don't know how to
this
think about
is
that. Is that too much? Is that
this is
the breadth is too wide?
I
Or
mean, this is a classic deep fried spork. I mean, that's what I'm definitely like that mode. But if anything, it works well for. I think I like it for the reason that it kind of cross-pollinates a lot of different insights and topics among these things, and somehow they're still all connected, obviously, because we are walking through them and one thing triggers another one. But it's also interesting to see how we are kind of pulling the conversation into different directions, because I can't help myself. I inevitably bring it back to like spirituality and philosophy and culture and values, even though we definitely started in the real world and history and politics that you started talking about, which is still a great points to talk about, and we spent like about half the time on that. But it's just funny how that's essentially the dynamic of the conversation, right? That like I can't help myself. I don't know what. So inevitably, all the questions about what to do with the world, you know, and with yourself, lead you to that self-inspection and what you can do about it. And to me, that's essentially the nature of spirituality, is that inspection.
yeah, it's more like you asking it for the sake of asking it almost, but because that will be a better result than not asking it. You know?
Right. Because if you're not asking it, if you're not inspecting it, then you just, it's like there's inertia, right? You're giving in to your base instincts and desires. You know, you just let the script run through.
That's the saying, right? Like an unexamined life is not worth living. So I think at the base level, yeah, everybody understand this. It's just that how much resistance and inertia do you allow it to win over you than, because like it's easy to just be lazy, right? It's the easiest thing to just be like, I don't care, whatever. I'm just gonna turn on YouTube, and watch this random video and that random video.
Thing is
But
that like I
ultimately,
tried even that, and even that like leads me down the same rabbit holes.
yeah, because ultimately, you see, you are who you are because that's how you are set up to be. Like, there's no escaping your fate almost, Like,
Kind of,
if
yeah.
that's how you think or how you structure your way of thoughts, then that will be you. You're doing exactly what you meant to do almost because it's like you wouldn't be able to escape it, right? You wouldn't able to get away with it. Just like this remind me of True Detective, like the way Russ Cole, the way he is, it's like there's something he can't like
Mm,
move away from. Like,
right.
why does he care? If he's so pessimistic, if he's so cynical about the world, why the fuck does he even care being a policeman? Because he does care. There's something about the thing he's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
working
yeah.
with. It's like, yeah, but I need to solve this. I need to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's almost a
It's something that
compulsion.
you cling, yeah, a compulsion. That's something you cling to without even you having a choice. Almost like
Yeah, because he
it's
said it
weird.
himself. It's like, yeah, I see all these Ks. There was that shot of him just like doing a photocopy of all the ghostly photos. And it's like, yeah, and basically he's saying it essentially like this kind of really pessimistic tone about like it's all pointless, right? The only thing that's real is these people are dead. Like what does it even matter or something like that? Like pretty profound. But he's essentially almost rejecting his whole thesis, but he's still doing it, right? I think he doesn't even know why he's even doing it, but just like a compulsion by which he's like, yep, this is me, this is who I am, this is what. So you can say, yeah, that's the sense of justice that he has, or whatever else that he's been propelled to do that. But sometimes life is like that. Like you are who you are because you wouldn't be doing the thing that you do if you aren't yourself, right? Like, whether or not you do something smart or stupid or whatever, I mean, it's kind of meant to be. Like, you did whatever you did at a certain time frame because that's at that point of your life, that's all you have. That's all the information you have. You're making the
Right.
decision according to
It
um
was the best move that you thought
that
you
you
could
could
make.
have made. Right? You wouldn't have moved otherwise. Like you can, in retrospect, you can think about, oh, that was dumb. That was stupid. That was idiotic. Like, sure, in retrospect.
Yeah.
But anybody who made the choice, this is why you can't even criticize almost what anybody did in history.
Exactly.
When
It's
you
true.
learn history, it's like you get to learn, you need to
You don't
learn.
know what it was like.
Right, you need to learn to be empathetic to these people, even if they did some really objectively horrible things. You can still kind of put it in the right context and be like, okay, why did he do it that way, right? It's not to justify what he did, but it's like, okay, well, I can see how.
Yeah, it wasn't like random stuff in the vacuum, right? That's
Yeah, nobody is like, oh, just because he's evil, or maybe, but
yeah.
there got to be a reason why
What
he's
is that
doing it.
saying? Like no, nobody thinks of themselves as evil, right?
Yeah,
Maybe some
they
psychopaths
they
do, but
do
not
things they
real. Not
think that they do the right thing. They're
yeah,
doing the right
yeah,
thing,
exactly.
So maybe that's a blind spot. Maybe that's a kind of a blind belief in yourself or
So yeah,
something.
that's another meditation to add to your plate is to ask yourself, are you evil? Because to somebody you may be, and
Because
that's
I think that everybody is capable of it. It's just is the right kind of environment is it present for you to do those kind of things. This is why
I mean,
it this is for me why Breaking Bad is such a great show is because I can see how anybody can become Walter White, right? He's in the right situation with the right incentives and the right kind of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the right stressors to make him go down that path. And I can empathize how that
Yeah, to, to,
mindset
to become
could become.
irrational and start exploring unorthodox options. I mean, why not? Who's making the rules
Isn't
here?
that what's happening in the real world? A lot of people
Yeah,
who turn to crime because, well, what else
yeah.
is there? What else do you expect that person to? I mean, I'm not excusing these,
But
criminal
yeah,
behaviors.
it highlights the nuance. It's the fact that it's nothing is simple or black and white like that.
Yeah. but sometimes I guess you do have to take a stand, I guess, because you can't just be thinking that and permitting everything, right? So we are still living in a society that by which we try to make law and order as a thing, where there are something we accept and something we reject, right? As a society, for it to work, you kind of have to make that moral stand. So yeah, there's only so much you can try to be understanding, right? There's certain things you just cannot accept, as a thing that people do, even though some people do it. So all that is to say, I mean, the world is in the most, this is unprecedented. I guess you would say it's unprecedented what's happening, even though nothing is new under the sun. It's just a new variations, right? But yeah, this year it seems it's already on the it's a hot track to whatever this is, right? It's happening all over the world, and these are reverberations are is sending out reverberations, and we're dealing how to deal with that. Also, with the current technologies and advancements and things, and make you question, okay, what's the price of progress? Is progress really the goal? Right? It seems like a lot of people buy into this, right? The idea that okay, progress is good. We need to make progress. We need to kind of, chase after technology, and this is going to change our lives. I mean, in a way, yes, but what about all the
Yeah,
other
this is the
stuff?
interesting part. Maybe in our lifetime we'll reach a point where we actually have movements and even philosophical positions of like, okay, how about we do some regress at this point, guys? Because it's like we need to deliberately regress. That's why there are such things as the simplified phones these days, the actual
Yeah, yeah,
products
yeah.
they
Actual
make like
thing.
the
Yeah,
yeah, because people realize, okay, hold on, this is not good. We need to
because
like mind this.
there was that whole what was that theory? Not theory, but like there's a framework about kind of galactic civilization. The levels to that is kind of judged by the energy level that they can master,
Hmm.
right? It was actually a Russian name. I think they use it to coin it, Kardov, or it's basically like a levels of civilizations, right? So for humans to kind of human are like level 0, where we haven't even mastered the sun. We haven't even mastered the energy of the sun, and and so we're at the lowest level. So
Oh yeah, Kardashev level
Kardashev,
scale levels
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
civilization energy. Okay.
exactly. That was a way to kind of gauge how these developments, like as a society, as a civilization, how much can you, it's that kind of because I think
So we're not even type one yet
not type
because
one, because type
we
one you had to be able to control the
planetary.
whole solar system. We had to be
No,
able to a
planetary.
planetary, right? Planetary, right? Yes, you're not even in control of that, right? So it's this kind of level of organization. I think life just kind of it means because our bodies are a collection of systems, right? That are organized. So you can think of it as like we are anti-chaos. We're anti sort of entropy. We're our whole life is just trying to organize out of this chaotic world. So meaning that these levels of existence, I should say, are just what mastery have you achieved in your own organization? How well can you organize? Can you organize your energy usage, your all this stuff, right? So you can build that up to that level, and then until galactic, where you're able to kind of be a master of your own kind of
Whole galaxy.
co-galaxies, um, but then if you think in this framework, well, yeah, that seems to be the level by which you go up to, because what else is there, right? If you're not mastering your
Yeah,
own,
yeah. It's the master. It's the control of the elements, right? As we discussed before. That's what I keep thinking about as well. Is that that's the only that's what's driving us essentially, because the control of the environment. But to what degree? If you are able to control it to the molecular level where you're able to replicate stuff, that's the dream, right? Because so I think that's literally the progress that we're trying to achieve. It's the mastering of the elements.
yeah, but it comes into conflict with basic human greed, where we're not all doing the work by which to kind of propel us to that level, right? Because we're so desperate, we're so disparate into our energy use, let's just say, right? We're doing all
the
kinds
people's
of
focus is way too local, and it's way too myopic, right? Everybody is just looking in front of their nose. So for something like a planetary level, would have to unite and be like unite by a purpose. But that's like,
but
you know,
see,
Cold War level zeal would have to be there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what, because of that fierce competition back then, that you see how funny it is, right? Humans are like, they're such vain creatures. It's almost like, oh, just because we don't want the Soviets to do it first. That was the reason.
Yeah.
That was the whole reason. Like, you're petty, right? You're very petty. And not because of some grand dream about humanity. It's just like, oh, just
that
we
was
don't
the
want
whole
the other guy to
plot
get it.
in it was the whole plot in Watchmen, right? The magical guy there created a bunch of terrorist attacks on major cities in the world, and they were united. The whole planet was united against him. It was such a smart plot, because he is technically a savior, because he does unite humanity in that action by becoming everybody's common enemy.
Yeah. So either aliens come knocking, by which then maybe humanity can, unite, because that just seems the natural thing to do, because you want to get wiped out.
Or that will be too late by that time.
Or too late, right?
Because the aliens will be just like, oh, hello, guys.
Yeah, just one little swat and you're gone, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know how humanity gonna even survive these. Like, sometimes we're a puzzle. Like, we even survived this long. Like, wow, like, really, this is just right now the level of shit that we're doing. Right, we're killing each other, and still, like, like, just fighting for oil, fighting for this and that resources. That's the level we're at. So
still that.
How do you move away from that? How you even propel yourself higher than that? It's like, it seems like we're incapable. We're like incapable.
That's going to be the topic for the next episode, okay? And next one, we'll definitely solve it. I'm confident. We're close. We're getting close. I'm pretty sure we're almost there.
Yeah, we're fried ourselves, man. This is it's too fried up, man. I didn't have planned for this to be this
but
much.
It worked out well, because, I mean, analyzing the insights from this one is going to be fun. So we'll definitely build on top of this, because I think we touched upon a lot of interesting topics here that will need to unfold in the future. But until then, stay crispy.
Yeah.